Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, I'm Kelly Cantrell, Deputy Administrator with the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. These work programs are to request the transfer and addition of $6.2 million in ARPA funds to secure a state match to implement the summer EBT program. The program will provide $40 to eligible children for each of the summer months, June, July, and August. And we anticipate 350,000 children will be served by this program, with $42 million coming into the Nevada economy. And we are available for any questions that you should have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. We'll go to Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. As you know, this is an issue we've been long following as you stand up this program, and we're actually working to feed families and kids. I'm curious to know, can you talk about when we anticipate issuing the benefits to recipients who are not currently enrolled in SNAP or TANF program? Do you have a time frame?
Kelly Cantrell for the record. Kelly Cantrell for the record. Any child that's not receiving SNAP or TANF will need to be issued a summer EBT card. The EBT vendor has indicated that it will take 5 weeks to issue cards for eligible children who are not on SNAP and TANF. So we plan to issue the benefits on September 16th. So approximately 5 weeks later, those cards should go out to individuals who do not currently have an EBT card. And we're anticipating that those cards will be received no later than the week of October 14th. Children who are not directly certified through the free and reduced lunch program will also need to apply for benefits. There's a group that's automatically enrolled, if you will, and then there's a group who will have to actually apply and submit an application. And applicants, excuse me, we can receive applications through November 30th. And then the division has 15 days to make an approval or denial decision on that application. So those benefits will go out on a flow basis based on when we receive the application. But those cards, since they're not going out en masse, should take no longer than a week for the individual to receive once the determination has been made that they're eligible.
Thank you for that detail. I'm curious to know, do you have the infrastructure, the plan in place to help folks fill out the applications? And then I'm also curious, we're doing that in multiple languages. Is that correct?
Kelly Cantrell for the record. Thank you for the question. The online application is currently under development. It will be ready, and we're going to do an outreach plan with the Department of Agriculture, Department of Education, community partners, our own internal outreach people, so that we can get the word out. But the application will be available. We will be getting the word out so that people can apply. And as of right now, I know that the application will be available in English and in Spanish.
Thank you. And so just, if we're going to do outreach and we know that we have additional people that are going to enroll, all of that is included in this financial request. Is that correct?
Kelly Cantrell for the record. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right. I am not seeing any other questions. I do have one. So for those children who are not currently, the families aren't receiving the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, they're not enrolled in that, or the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program, how are those other families being identified? What's that process?
Kelly Cantrell for the record. So SNAP, Med, and TANF children, we automatically identify through our own system. We are going to get files that we will receive from the Department of Education for any child that's enrolled in the school free or reduced lunch program that is actually certified. So they put an application in, they've qualified for the program. We will get those files from the Department of Ed, and we will be able to automatically issue to those families without an application.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. With that, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve items 45, 46, and 094. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and that's N62. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Monroe Moreno, Vice Chair Dondera Loop, and members of the Interim Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Patty Charlton, last name spelled Charlton, and I serve as the Interim Chancellor for the Nevada System of Higher Education. I am here today to request your support for item number 62, which is related to Assembly Bill 150 that was approved during the 2023 session of the legislature. AB 150 provided support to Native American students within the Nevada System of Higher Education. This bill required the Board of Regents to grant waivers of registration and other mandatory fees for certain Native American students and allocated funds to NCHE to cover those costs. We are grateful for the legislature's appropriation of $457,449 each year of the current biennium to support the Native American fee waiver. This legislation aligns specifically with the Board of Regents and NCHE's priorities of promoting access, student success, and equity within our higher education system. This program has been quite successful as we've had many more students apply and receive this fee waiver. In fact, our preliminary data for the FY24 fiscal year shows that we had over 450 students eligible to receive these funds. So today I'm before you to request your support of a transfer of $1,670,563 in order to support the expenditures that are in excess of the appropriation. Your support is crucial for us in advancing our educational opportunities and promoting economic prosperity for all Nevadans. And today I'm also joined, and I have here with me, should you have questions, representatives from the System Administration Financial Aid Office, if you have any questions specifically about the program, and then also a representative from UNR, Indigenous Relations Office, and then also a business officer from TMCC, should you have any questions.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation. Members, if you remember correctly, during the last legislative session, there was legislation passed that created a grant program for tribal communities. And unfortunately, that money was not used. And Senator Dondera Loop and I have been working with the governor's office to make sure that that money stayed in that population, and we found that the best way to do that was to help our Native American students with tuition. That way, that community was still getting that funding that we as a body set aside. So, are there any other questions? Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's really great to see you here today. Thank you for your work. This is a phenomenal program, one that I was proud to work with my colleagues on last session. I love that we are having such an opportunity to serve so many students. My question, though, is long-term. We know that we're waiving the fees that are associated with our Native American population that are attending at Nevada schools. What's NCHE's plan to fund the loss of revenues that are resulting from this fee waiver long-term?
Thank you so much. For the record, again, Chair Monroe Moreno, Patty Charlton, through you to the Assemblywoman, sorry, I can't see from here. Just so you know, we are working with the Interim Committee on Education. In fact, we have a presentation next week to that body regarding fee waivers as a whole, and so that we can engage in that conversation. We do not know what the impact of this specific fee waiver for the FY24-25 fiscal year and academic year will be. However, I do stand that we would love to have the opportunity to come back and bring information to you regarding that. But in the interim, what we will have to do is institutions will have to absorb the cost of any gap of that funding.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify for the fee waivers for the Native Americans, are those for Nevada residents, just for Nevada?
So I'm actually going to ask, if you don't mind, Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Kasama, our financial aid office personnel to come. And his name is Jose Curiga.
Thank you for the question, Jose Quiroga, for the record, Q-U-I-R-O-G-A. May I address directly?
You can.
Thank you, Chair. Assemblywoman Kasama, thank you for that question. The expansion that occurred to the fee waiver in the 2023 session did slightly change the eligibility of students. All of them who become eligible for the waiver become in-state residents for tuition purposes. However, who is eligible? A student has to be either an enrolled member or a descendant of an enrolled member of any federally recognized Native American tribe or nation in the United States. And then they have to have what some have referred to as a nexus to Nevada. There are several ways to establish that. One of them is to already be a resident of Nevada. So that's the simplest one for tuition purposes. Another one is to have lived in Nevada for a year or more, and that's part of being in that nexus. Another way is to have lived in lands that are federally recognized tribal lands that are not necessarily in Nevada, but adjacent to Nevada for a Nevada tribe. So that may be a member of a tribe that is just over the border in California, however, in tribal lands that overlap both states. And so to your question, there are students that wouldn't be traditionally recognized as a Nevada resident. However, due to being eligible for the program, they would become a Nevada resident for tuition purposes.
I see. I'm just looking at the shortfall in revenues. I'm just curious, do the other neighboring states offer these tuition fee waivers for Native Americans, let's say in California or Utah or Idaho?
Definitely. There are some other fee waivers throughout the nation, including in California, that offer certain waivers. Each of them have slightly different provisions. They cover slightly different programs, and that's part of what will be included in our presentation to the Interim Education Committee. Just what our or the Native American fee waiver in Nevada provisions are and how they may compare nationally.
I see. If we're short, maybe it's something to look at, it's only Nevada residents or that, but thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I know Assemblywoman Anderson did a lot of work on this bill last legislative session. It's sad that she can't be here today, but I did discuss this with her, and she was very happy with what we were doing with these funds. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and for Assemblywoman Anderson, wherever you're at, thank you for the work that you have done on this. Speaker Yater.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And so my question is, it looks like in Assembly Bill 150, approximately $500,000 was allocated for this purpose, and here we are at $2.1 million for fiscal year 2024. Obviously supportive of the program, but sometimes we enact these programs and nobody takes advantage of them, and we seem to have the opposite issue here, which in my mind is a good thing. Question was, do you have any sense of why the demand was so much greater than what was sort of anticipated or budgeted for? Was that, are you guys doing any affirmative marketing for this program? Or if you can maybe speak to that, and then, that might help us in the future determine what would be an appropriate level of funding for this program.
Jose Quiroga, for the record, Q-U-I-R-O-G-A. That is a great question. As you have noted, there have been great increases in both the number of students and dollars utilized or waived. There are several reasons for that. It's a multifaceted, I was going to say problem. It's not a problem. It's a good thing happening. Of course, it leads to a shortfall. The first item that made a major change was simply in AB 150, the change from the waiver previously only covered the balance of tuition and fees after other aid has been already applied, federal aid and other state aid. That by itself accounts for a large portion of the increase in dollars. However, that there has also been an increase in the population of students, and I think it's several reasons why. One is the word has gotten out. We've, in a good way, we've had partners with the Nevada Indian Commission, other tribal and Native American nations groups come to us and ask for presentations. Our institutions who work with tribes and nations in Nevada and throughout the nation will have reached out to them. So it's been a mixture of increased participation and an increase in the fees waived.
I think also just for the record, again, Patty Charlton, Assemblywoman Yeager, the other item that changed was also the expansion of the programs that were eligible. So it also includes non-credit programs as well as undergraduate and professional programs as well.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved.
Have a motion to approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblywoman Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move on to N64. Good afternoon. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Barbara Buckley. I am the Executive Director of Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. I'm pleased to come before you with a request for $2 million for our advocacy and justice complex. Just to refresh the members' recollection, when October 1st, 2017 happened, the state and the county struggled to provide services to the survivors of the nation's worst incidents of mass violence, both in the short term and the long term. Experts from the federal government, Department of Justice, Office of Mass Violence flew to Nevada, and the decision was made to create a resiliency center because virtually no services were offered to survivors of violent crime in Nevada at the time for shootings, arson, home invasion, and the like. So shortly after that tragic day, the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center was born. 6.5 years later, the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center is now the Resiliency and Justice Center. It now serves all survivors of violent crime, in addition to those affected by the violence on October 1. It also stands ready to assist in any incidents of mass violence when activated by the Office of Emergency Management for Clark County, as was recently done for the December 6th shooting at UNLV and for the City National Bank shooting. The request before you today is for a permanent home for the Resiliency and Justice Center and other legal aid programs serving victims of crime, and programs to prevent the exploitation of the elderly, such as our Family Justice Project serving survivors of domestic violence, and our Guardianship Advocacy Project, which seeks to prevent the exploitation of the elderly in guardianship. These programs will be housed at the Advocacy and Justice Complex, which is right across the street from Legal Aid Center's main headquarters. The project will be about 40,000 square feet, and it will include a community action room, which will be a conference room with a capacity of about 3,000 square feet. We'll be able to hold approximately 200, including 30 workstations that can be activated when there is a mass violence incident. These folks will receive calls from family members of victims, so the Office of Emergency Management can do what they do best, and that is to provide the emergency response. All of this program has been set up in partnership with Clark County Office of Emergency Management and Clark County. We also have been designated to be the statewide Victim Assistance Center, and the Resiliency and Justice Center are now receiving calls from victims and law enforcement in other communities. At the center, the services offered include victim navigation, mental health services, and legal aid, all with the goal of promoting healing and resiliency following violent crime. The overall cost of the project is $30 million. We have received over $12 million in funding from some of our community's amazing philanthropists. And we have currently raised $25 million and have $4.9 million left to raise. This $2 million will help us get almost to the finish line. The rest of the funding will be raised by me. We anticipate raising that entire amount by the end of this year. We already have our requests for permits pending before the City of Las Vegas Planning Commission. Construction is anticipated to begin once the permits are issued. Bidding is done with the subcontractors. We anticipate starting construction in January 1st. And our architect and general contractor, who have already been selected, anticipate an 18-month timeline. This project will move our state forward. It is desperately needed. As we at Legal Aid have no space either at the Resiliency and Justice Center or at our main office to serve victims. So it will allow us to serve from one spot. It will be a one-stop shop, preventing survivors from having to go to multiple locations. It will allow us expansion to serve both the state and the community better, especially as we continue to grow. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I know we have a few questions. We're going to start with Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you, Speaker Buckley. I just have a couple questions for you. And one is can you sort of give us some understanding of why the construction costs for the center have increased from the $17.5 million to the $30 million?
Yes, absolutely. So when I first came before you, almost a couple years ago now, our project estimates were given to us from an estimator. At the time, we were just starting raising money, and we did not have the funds to get specific estimates from our architect and our contractor. Once we secured enough money to know this project was going to happen, we hired our architect. Unfortunately, in the very beginning, we were only able to get a concept drawing. And once the actual blueprints, drawings were finalized based on what they believe our need is, the cost increased. The other part of the cost increase was increases in labor and materials, which have significantly increased since we began our project. We feel fortunate, though, that we have a wonderful architect and a great contractor who will be performing value engineering to make sure that this project comes in under budget. But that's the reason for the cost escalation.
I appreciate that. And just to sort of follow up with that, I think you gave us the timeline, but could you remind us exactly where the building's going to be and the timeline to raise that additional $4+ million?
Yes. So the building will be at 801 East Charleston, which is right across the street, right across 8th Street from where we are currently located. It was the former U.S. Bank building, and we are very fortunate that U.S. Bank, when they closed that location, they gave us a deeply discounted price because of their support of this project. The construction, we anticipate, if there's no problems with the permitting and the planning commission process, beginning in January, such that the project would be finished in August of 2026. There is currently, well, as of yesterday, there was a $4.9 million gap. If this was approved, it would be a $2.9 million gap. But fortunately, we received $500,000 yesterday, so we're one step closer to our goal. The remainder of the gap will be raised through private fundraising. We also have a letter of credit should we need to utilize it for the $4 million gap. But honestly, we won't even approach that until probably January of 26, because we have funding to fund the construction of the project all the way through there. But with the generosity of this community and the amazing response we've received from, we've received over $12 million in private philanthropy, I'm confident that we'll raise the remaining sums.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Assemblywoman Kasama?
Thank you, Chair. This is a great project, and like you said, the community is supporting it, which is great to see that we have public and private partnership. I just have a general question, and that might be for Director Robb. I'm not quite sure, but not necessarily just yours. But when we donate money to nonprofit organizations for real estate, not for operations, but this will help fund actual real estate, do we have any deed restrictions, or have we considered anything like that? I don't think Legal Aid Center is going to go away, but other nonprofits that perhaps don't succeed or close, and we as a state have provided money, do we have any deed restrictions that perhaps that money would come back to the state, or is that something we could consider as a state to look into?
As Director Robb walks to the table, I would remind the committee that these are ARPA dollars. These are federal dollars that came through our state to be used for this type of purpose.
You're absolutely correct, and
Yes.
I apologize for that. Yeah, so this is outside of that. Now
Correct.
that I think about it, you're
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Jack Robb, Director of Department Administration. Thank you for the question, but it's not really within the Department Administration's wheelhouse. That is Department of Conservation, Natural Resource, State Lands, and the State Land Register to make that type of determination. Even when we do something, I have to go through state lands to get permission to build on state land, so I'm not familiar with their process.
Thank you so much. Not seeing any other questions, I'd like to thank you, Speaker Buckley, for the work that you're doing and continuing this project. And hopefully we don't have many more situations or any more situations that would have to utilize the center, but it's a blessing to have it in our community. So thank you for the work that you continue to do in your service to our community. Not seeing any other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve.
I have a motion from Senator Dondero-Loop, a second from Assemblywoman Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, moving to our next item on our agenda, which is N65. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm David Goldwater with Pinion Public Affairs, representing Community Khalil on the agenda today. You have a request I'm honored to present to you for $750,000 from the ARPA money to go to security for a grant program for security for some of the Jewish schools in our state. Following the pandemic shutdowns in 2020 and 2021, anti-Semitic hate crimes rose by 36% in 2022, according to FBI crime data. Jewish K-12 nonprofit schools in Nevada are particularly high-profile and attractive targets for those seeking to inflict maximum harm on the Nevada Jewish community. This program will provide assistance to nonprofit K-12 education institutions at risk of attack due to anti-Semitism to improve their security and reduce risk and impact of any such attacks. The Community Collel of Greater Las Vegas will administer this program, providing financial assistance for local nonprofit schools to invest in those security measures. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you for your consideration of this item, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I am not seeing any questions, but I thank you for being here to present this. As with other items on today's agenda, my Vice Chair, Senator Dondera Loop, and I have been working with the Governor's Office to bring this one forward, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you again.
Not seeing any questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and with that, so moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, it is N66. Do we have a representative joining us from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for the Joint Emergency Training Center? Are you on the phone?
Hi, yes. I'm sorry, my video doesn't appear to be working. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Just go ahead and state your name and spell it for the record.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee member. My name is Rich Hogan. Last name is spelled Hoggan. I'm the Chief Financial Officer with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I believe most of you, or at least some of you, may have been had some exposure to the project that we have had in place for a couple of years now, which we initiated in a partnership with North Las Vegas and have subsequently expanded it to other first responder agencies as well. We've had two large facilities constructed by the LVMPD Foundation. That was about a $28 million project. One of those buildings is in use. It's a combination of a classroom, office, and mat rooms, multiple mat rooms. And the second facility is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a large space which, subsequent to its construction, has remained unused because the increase in construction costs and materials costs during the pandemic had resulted in insufficient funds to finish the interior of the build out of that building. The intent of that building is to provide a reality-based training center for the participating first responder agencies to practice response to routine events, practice de-escalation techniques, practice joint response, which we've seen now in play, unfortunately, again, kind of mirroring Speaker Buckley's comments as well. We saw that in play on October and most recently with the UNLV event. I echo that hopefully we don't have to do that again, but nonetheless, this is a place for us to practice those joint response efforts. So we had secured funding, which we had assumed was sufficient between contributions from the LVMPD Capital Fund, a $2 million contribution, from Nevada Department of Public Safety as a result of the last session. We appreciate that support. And then a $1 million Justice Department grant. Unfortunately, when we went out to bid, again, sort of mirroring Speaker Buggy's experience, increased construction costs, along with what necessitated some changes in codes from the time the building was constructed until now, just put us in a position we just didn't have sufficient funds to be able to complete the project. So we're very close. We are just looking for that final bit in order for us to be able to move forward and build out essentially that interior space. I should mention from a state perspective that we are participating with our Department of Public Safety, state police, gaming control, and then as well as the city of North Las Vegas and UNLV police and the federal agency DEA as well are current participants. I'd be willing to entertain any questions.
Thank you so much. I believe we have one or two questions for you. We're going to start with Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you could please discuss any contingency plans or financial controls in place by the police department to ensure the construction of the interior of the reality-based training center would be completed in the event that the construction costs exceed the projected $14.7 million.
BPS, did we lose the caller?
Let me try again. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you now, yes. We thought we lost you for a minute.
I'm so sorry. Senator Harris, through the chair, again, Rich Hogan for the record. Thank you for the question, Senator. So great question. We have already bid this, so we are pretty confident in the resources being sufficient to be able to cover the costs. But to your point, sometimes things pop up during the course of construction that are unexpected. But we will make the necessary adjustments in our budget to absorb those additional costs. We don't anticipate them being, if they are any, we don't anticipate them being more than hopefully we can handle by the transference if necessary.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not going to ask this, but so can you tell me the $25 million training facility that you guys built in 2020, is that the one that you're trying to build out, or is this a whole different structure?
Yes, Senator, through the chair, again, Rich Hogan for the record. Yes, great question, Senator. This is the same facility. So, there are two. It's a regional training center. One of the facilities is completely constructed and built out, and the other one is the one that does not have the interior constructed, and that's what we're trying to finish.
So just for clarification, so in 2020, because it was October, and don't ask me why I still have this email, but I like receipts. But so you guys put $25 million towards a facility, but you weren't. So it was for two, not one. And so one is fully baked and one needs money to what's missing in the interior? I guess that's a better question.
Yes. So again, Senator, through the chair, Rich Hogan for the record. So there are two facilities. One facility is it's a great metaphor. Yes, it's currently baked. It's occupied. It's in use. It's classrooms, mat rooms, and essentially training area. The second facility, which is entirely constructed but lacks any interior, is the reality-based training facility. So picture, houses, commercial space to give first responders a chance to practice scenarios in a life-like environment. So that's what we're lacking, is that build out. So there just was not sufficient funds for the LVMPD Foundation to complete that build out.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll just for clarification, the only reason why I remembered this is because you guys at the time were looking to try to use the new market tax credits, and I believe you did not use them. And then you ended up breaking ground and finding the $25 million on your own. And as I was cleaning out my emails a couple of weeks ago, I had found that email. And so, right.
Yes. Yes. So thank again, Senator, through the chair. So it was the LVMPD Foundation that constructed that for us and then donated it to us. So that was all private dollars. I don't know what they chose to pursue, if they were looking at using something like that. So I apologize. I just don't have any. I don't have any background on it since it was them sort of taking lead on that. I apologize.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a crazy knack of holding on to everything since Jesus. But I'm going to stop one day, but it's been my saving grace to have everything.
Glad you do.
Senator Nguyen?
This is just more of a clarifying question. This construction, this funds isn't actually, you're not here on behalf of Metro, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. You're here on behalf of the foundation because the money is being requested to go to the foundation. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. So again, Rich Hogan for the record, through the chair. The foundation completed the construction. We have those facilities have been now turned over to LVMPD. And so we are operating the facilities and maintaining them. They're no longer a foundation related. There's no longer a relationship to the foundation for the buildings, I guess. They're now ours, if you will. And so the build out of the interior is falling to us, meaning the police department, as opposed to the foundation. So the request is for the funds to LVMPD and not to the foundation. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. Members, any other questions? Not seeing any, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve from Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Second?
Second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in person next time, if there's a next time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Moving on, the next items on our agenda will be N72, and we will hear that with N73. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Director Goycochea, Nevada Department of Agriculture, GOI-COE-CHEA. I have Deputy Director Ferris and Director Robb with administration here with me as well today. This ask is for $10,570,000 of ARPA money to purchase and renovate approximately 27,925 square feet of warehouse space in Las Vegas for our food and nutrition program to utilize. That will include for about 15,000 square feet of dry, 2,000 square feet of cold, and 10 to 14,000 square feet of freezer space. We currently utilize our dry storage warehouse at our aging facility on St. Louis, and we are leasing cold and frozen space from Ready Ice in Las Vegas. We would hope that this would better enable us to more rapidly meet the needs of the Las Vegas area and Southern Nevada. We do deliver into Lincoln County and Nye County as well out of this warehouse. And I'll rest.
Thank you. I believe we have a few questions for you. We're going to start with Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Mr. Goycochea, could you just clarify how much total space are you leasing right now?
Yes, I can. So we lease approximately 2,000 square feet of space from Ready Ice. That is on a rolling basis. And what we have to do with them is we must call them when we want to make a pickup or a delivery and accommodate their delivery schedules in addition to ours. So we tend to roll a lot of product through that small limited space.
Thank you, sir. This is a significant change and increase in what you all have readily available. And my question is, are you going to need additional staff? And if so, where will they be paid from? And if not from ARPA dollars, which we know is just one-time money, will this affect your budgets and future requests for more funding in order to employ more folks?
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Madam Chair, may I go direct? Thank you, Director Goycochea. For the record, and no, we do not anticipate any increase in staff. We actually hope to see a more efficient workforce because right now we spend several hours a week crisscrossing Las Vegas trying to make our pickups and deliveries, and with having them centralized in one location and also being able to lean on our partners at purchasing who have an adjacent warehouse should we have some need for additional forklift operators, et cetera, in the area. We hope to be much more efficient with that. In regards to ongoing budget, we will be utilizing SAE, which is state authorized expense through our federal partners, and that will pay for our ongoing power, utilities, that kind of things in this building. So that's what we currently utilize as well, and we do not foresee an increase need in our budget with this.
Thank you. Speaker Yeager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project is $10.6 million. Are you able to share with the committee what the cost would be if you were, instead of going this direction, if you were to actually construct your own building for the same purpose?
Jack Robb, Director of Department Administration, for the record, through you, Madam Chair, to Speaker Yeager. If we constructed this, it would be north of $40 million. And we're looking for 10.5. And that's with the current build. And the only way that this current build works, it's directly adjacent to the purchasing warehouse that was funded through the last session. They're being built simultaneously. One's to close in July. We're going to own that building in July. The building proposed today, we will close mid-November. And if we didn't operate those two jointly, we would need a bigger footprint to accommodate his trucks. But with us able to operate them jointly, the footprint works. As he said, we will have staff overlap. When we need help, his staff will be there. Our efficiencies are going to go up. Vehicle utilization is within a quarter mile of the campus. So it would be $40 million plus because we would need a bigger footprint.
You're welcome. Members, any other questions? Senator Gocochea, I'm looking at the younger version of you.
Yeah, my younger brother. Madam Chair, although it wouldn't impact me any differently than anybody else, I will abstain from this just because of the name spelling. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just had a follow-up, and I think Director Robb, you may have already kind of explained it in your explanation that the warehouse adjacent has already been acquired by your team. But is that kind of how you were able to estimate the building, purchase cost? And also, were you able to figure out what the improvements were? I'm just trying to figure out if these costs were comparable to something else, how you guys came about the total number. I know you're really good at this, but I'm just kind of what the source was on that.
Jack Robb for the record. Again, I really do thank you for that question because I'm able to answer these questions, unlike the last two times I've been sitting up here. We based the base price off of the purchasing warehouse we bought next door, the exact equivalent price per square foot. When it comes to the tenant improvements, because it is brand new construction, there is not going to be anything unforeseen with this project. And the owner-developer of this project has a very hard bid for the tenant improvements going forward because there will not be any unforeseen situation come up with this property. So we are confident in our price based on prior appraisals, we have money in escrow, we just haven't closed yet, and knowing we have a hard bid on the tenant improvements, so we are confident in our price.
I'm glad we finally gave you a question you could answer. Appreciate it. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
And with that, we'll move to our next item, which will be item number 76. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Michelle Joy, and I'm the CEO of Carson Tahoe Health. Joining me this afternoon is Kitty McKay, who is our Senior Executive Leader of Patient and Community Experience. We're here to request $3,478,000 for the Healing Our Kids Crusade. Carson Tahoe Health has been the local not-for-profit independent hospital and healthcare provider for Carson City and the surrounding rural areas for the past 75 years. We are committed to improving the health and well-being of our communities. We have all either personally experienced or know someone who has faced the current mental health crisis affecting our youth. For the hospital, we've gone from seeing a small handful of kids a year come to our emergency room in crisis to now it's almost a daily occurrence. I don't know what's worse than a crisis, but that's what we've been witnessing here. Over the last 5 months, we've seen exponential increases in children presenting to our ER, often filling our 8-bed inpatient medical pediatric unit and still having 1 or 2 kids holding in our emergency room. The hospital ER and inpatient medical unit are not the right place for these kids to heal. In 2016, we faced a similar situation with adults in our community, which prompted us to quickly stand up a crisis stabilization unit in Carson City, which has been operational for 7 years now. And it's successfully reduced legal holds in the ER and jails, allowing these individuals to get the right care in the right setting. We are seeking infrastructure dollars to do the same thing and more for our kids. Guided by the direction of our 2 child psychiatrists, our request for $3,478,000 will enable us to create the following services for our kids: a 10-bed inpatient behavioral health unit, a 12-bed crisis stabilization unit, expanded outpatient community-based services, and retrofit 2 RVs for mobile services to our outlying rural communities in Douglas, Lyon, and Story County. We're already taking care of these kids at the highest level of care and cost in the behavioral health continuum. These funds will allow us to provide services earlier in the continuum in a much more appropriate and safe setting. Thank you for your support in bringing these much-needed services to our children. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you are doing to address this need that's statewide, but at least we can start taking care of some things up here. I think we have just one question for you, and I'm going to go to Senator Neal.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, I didn't have one.
I'm so sorry, Speaker Yeager.
I was like, is this setup?
I don't know if I can bring the heat like Senator Neal can, but thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously supportive of this. I think every one of us up here at the dais, I mean, we hear from constituents all the time how important mental health is, not just for youth, but for adults as well. I mean, it really is an area of need in our state, and I think this gets us closer to where we need to be. You mentioned in the presentation you serve Douglas, Lyon, Story, and obviously here in Carson City. I just wondered if you could give us a sense of, I guess, maybe currently and then projecting if this were to be approved and you were to build out as anticipated. What do you think the composition is in terms of your service to those counties? I assume Carson City is probably the biggest population, but if you could maybe give us a sense of that. And then also, are there any other counties other than I know Carson City's like a weird county city thing, but I'm going to call it a county for this purpose, right? But any other counties other than the 4 that we've talked about that you anticipate would use the services as well?
So when we look at the numbers that we projected on the mobile outreach component, we were anticipating roughly 12 encounters a day with our mobile outreach services, which would then be roughly a little over 3,000 touch points in a year in those communities. I think one of the challenges for us is the distance to some of those further outlying communities. So when we look at our current primary service area for Carson Tahoe, it's Carson City, Douglas, Lyon, and Story County. So 75% of our patients come from those 4 counties. And so we anticipate seeing that same need and service area for us to be able to reach out to.
Thank you. Any other questions? Assemblyman O'Neill.
I will take that as an apology, Speaker. Chair, also, I'd like to make a disclosure on this item N76. Since it's a transfer of money to Carson Tahoe, I sit on the board of directors for Carson Tahoe Hospital, and I think it would be best if, and under advice of attorney, I will be abstaining from my vote today. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you making that statement. Senator Pacina.
Thank you so much. This is so necessary, and I'm thrilled to read more into this. I was curious, in the last few years since the pandemic, if you've seen the need rise even more among youth in the community here.
I would say that's unquestionable. But we also have to really be clear that the fundamentals of all of this have been here for quite some time and just were exacerbated by the pandemic. What we've seen, even just from January of this year, when we talk about our 8 medical beds all filled instead of with appendicitis and tonsils, they're all kids on legal holds. And these kids that are on legal holds that need higher level of care, we don't have the facilities in the state to take care of them. So to look a mom in the eye and say, well, your child could get care in Montana is just not something we can do. And so, certainly the pandemic, certainly social media, certainly diet, exercise, being outdoors, all of those things. So a lot of our programming is trying to look at speaking to the root causes as well as the healing the emergent nature of this situation.
Senator Titus.
So thank you very much for being here as someone who's referred patients in my time in the ER to Carson a lot. I appreciate that pathway and that ability to do that, and that Carson's always been there for us when you had beds available. My question, you gave us a pretty good timeline on how you're going to have it from a building part. What I want to know is from a operational standpoint and personnel, because lots of times we have monies for these buildings, we have beds, literally beds, but you and I both know sometimes you say you're full because you don't have the personnel there. The bed doesn't actually have somebody in it. So my question relates to personnel. Do you estimate that you'll have the appropriate number of personnel to operate so you can operate to capacity?
Madam Chair, may I go direct? Michelle Joy for the record. Great question. And one of the things that we have been really proud about from an organizational perspective is we hear about the nursing shortage. We hear about the high use of travelers. We have not had a nursing traveler within the organization for over a year and a half. And so we've been able to successfully grow our pipeline, staff our facilities, keep all of our beds open. We have 2 child psychiatrists currently employed, a nurse practitioner for kids on the behavioral health side, actively recruiting a second one. And then we have a number of interns that we are currently training through the UNR School of Public Health that are coming into our facility to help us grow that pipeline. We've added additional staff within our current behavioral health services, anticipating that we would be able to receive funding and then get this operational, but we've been really successful on the recruitment and retainment of our staff.
Well, thank you for that. And the only thing that I would ask from there then is you ought to be a poster child for this. And can you share some of how you've done that with the rest of our state? Because most facilities, I know in ours, our long-term care is staffed with travelers and so many other agencies. So you're doing something right. And hopefully when you meet with other folks in the profession that you can share some of your way you can be successful in retaining these healthcare professionals. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Not seeing any, then I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Madam Chair.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we have 1 abstain. Motion passes. Thank you. And that takes us to item number 77.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Lisa Morris-Hibbler, thank you. For the record, Lisa Morris-Hibbler, Executive Director of the Shaquille O'Neal Foundation. Joining me on this call is Andy Basel, CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada, and Tammy Hanslier, CEO of Communities and Schools of Nevada. On behalf of the foundation, we are before you today to request $4 million from the state of Nevada ARPA revenue loss reserve category, which will provide the gap funding needed to cover costs associated with the project. The development costs are estimated to exceed $16 million, with the facility being funded in part by the Shaquille O'Neal Foundation, based on a $6 million gift for construction, as well as other philanthropic donations and new market tax credit financing. We all know that COVID-19 pandemic profoundly impacted education in Southern Nevada, exacerbating existing disparities and widening the achievement gap among students. Moreover, the social and emotional well-being of students has been significantly affected, with isolation, anxiety, and uncertainty taking a toll on their overall learning experience. The proposed Shaquille O'Neal Youth Development Complex, through an operational partnership with Communities and Schools in Nevada and the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada, will offer key programs and services, including K-12 educational support, social-emotional learning and behavioral support, a teen tech hub, and a CIS alumni center. The CIS Alumni Center will serve young adults ages 18 to 24 to prepare for college and/or career readiness, and this is believed to be the first alumni center in our nation. I do want to note that the statewide Boys and Girls Club Alliance was awarded funding from the IFC in the amount of, with $3.5 million of that funding allocated to the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada to support a development of a pre-K center that will be located on this campus, but is a separate project in an adjacent building. This project is poised to make a significant impact on the educational landscape in Southern Nevada, with a focus of students living in and around Northeast Las Vegas. On behalf of children in our community, I want to thank the Governor's Office for supporting this application, and we are respectfully asking for the support of the Interim Finance Committee. We are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, I am not seeing any. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So moved.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your support. Thank you.
All right, moving on. The next item on our agenda is item number 87. For a subaward to the St. Jude's Ranch for Children.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can. Hello.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Christina Vella, and I am the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children. St. Jude's Ranch is an agency that has been providing critical services to thousands of victims of abuse and neglect with young people experiencing homelessness for over 57 years in the state of Nevada. Over our many years of service, we have worked diligently to identify gaps in services, primarily for children and young people most in need. Over the past several years, we identified alongside our community and state that addressing sex trafficking is of critical importance. Of particular interest is supporting child victims of the heinous crime of sex trafficking. With support from the many state and county partners, as well as law enforcement, judicial representatives, and many community partners, we identified the much-needed solution, one of the many much-needed solutions that will act as an alternative to the Juvenile Justice Detention Center or Child Haven. With our experience of providing residential care for children over 50 plus years, and with the resource of land that we have identified the need to create the Healing Center, a residential care program with a holistic array of services to include 6 homes or 60 beds, 2 additional emergency shelter beds available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all 365 a year, gardens, and a very special on-site school in partnership with Clark County School District. While we had started our pre-planning pre-COVID, post-COVID, the cost for the project nearly doubled. The construction project for the 10 acres is $23 million, and to date we have raised close to $18 million, $5 million, which is specifically for the school. The remaining $13 million has covered construction to date. Construction has outpaced our fundraising efforts, which is not something that you generally hear. And while we're grateful for the incredible funding we have received to include from our many amazing partners like casinos, Clark County, foundations, and very generous philanthropists, we have a gap. At this time, construction is slated to be completed by October 3rd, 2024. Our close to $10 million funding gap is planned to be filled with a $4 million loan, which to support our cash flow needs, which we have already secured, continued aggressive fundraising strategy, and if this $5 million request that you all have in front of you is approved, would go an incredibly long way to help us filling the gap. We are additionally working aggressively on new market tax credits, both state and federal, and have several organizations that are very, very excited to partner with us on that new market tax credit. My guess is you have a question: what happens if we don't secure the funding, since we have such a short time frame? If we don't secure funding or have a pledge of funding to get us through the rest of the construction phase, we may have to consider slowing construction or even stopping it. However, the school, which is on our property, is fully developed, has a principal, and has 8 teachers ready to receive our students. So we are assertively working to find funding to not have to slow down construction. Post-construction, we have a funding model that supports the operation of the program through expanded contracts with our county partners, such as Clark County and Washoe County. We're looking to ask for some heightened reimbursement rates, but additionally, we're a Medicaid provider. We will use grants and other donations to sustain the operational budget. So I am respectfully requesting the approval of the $5 million that will provide a foundation for quality programming, for hope and healing for children so in need of care, certainly for generations to come. So thank you so much, and available for questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And yes, the questions that you noted in your presentations were questions that I had for you. So thank you for adding that to the presentation. And thank you for the work that you're doing, because far too often these children are seen as criminals and they're actually victims. And the work that you do will change, that you are doing, changes lives. So thank you for that. Members, any questions?
Thank you.
See no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and so moved.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that takes us to the next item on our agenda. Item 88, as we indicated at the top of the meeting, was withdrawn. We'll go to item 89. Is there a representative here from the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center for the new Pathway Cosmetology Program? BPS, do we have anyone joining us online?
I don't see anyone coming forward, Chair.
All right, then we will move to the next item on our agenda, and hopefully someone from DLC will come back to present this to us. If not, then we'll have to just move it to our next meeting. And members, that was the last item on list N. If a representative does come back, we will go back to it. But until then, we'll keep pushing forward. And we'll move over to item O on our agenda. We've already heard 32. We will hear items 68, 69, 71, and 72 together. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Stacy Weeks for the record, Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy. I have with me here Deputy Jennifer Krupp and our Fiscal Deputy. Today we're here to present 4 work programs. So the first 2 I would present together, 68 and 70. These 2 together transfer $750,000 from the assessed property tax for hospitals and matches that with $750,000 in federal Medicaid funds to support the division with hiring a vendor to assist us with reforming our delivery system for children with behavioral health needs and foster care kids. We're looking at establishing a new specialized managed care organization over the next 2 years. And we can talk a little bit about that more if you guys have questions on that. And then the other 2 work programs in front of you today are 69 and 70. That first one, 69, is transferring $576,900 in the property tax funds to support the division, and it'll be matching that with federal match to support the division with hiring new staff and filling positions so we can support some of the reforms that we need to undertake to come into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act for children with behavioral health needs in the state. And this is part of our phase 2 for the DOJ settlement agreement. I would just note we came back, we were here in April. Thank you. We're very grateful for your support of those programs and the funding we received from that for new services and additional staff. This is I think our last effort to come forward and ask for funding to support this work. We're still in negotiations, so I can't speak to the details, but I will say that we believe this funding and this support and the new delivery system is necessary to comply with the DOJ settlement agreement. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I know that we do have a few questions for you. We're going to go to Senator Nguyen.
Thank you. I feel like I always get to ask you questions. Part of this was about specialized managed care plans for children's behavioral health. And I know that there were references to some other similarly implemented plans in Washington, Arizona, and Ohio. Can you kind of describe what kind of successes those other states have experienced following the implementation of these specialized managed care plans?
Madam Chair, Stacy Weeks for the record. We have been looking nationally at how children are covered generally in Medicaid. And I will say 47 states actually cover children across the board with special needs in managed care. What we have found nationally, the best practice, there's about 15 states that do a specialized program for children. And when we've done our research, we find that, and our consultants also agree, that when we do a specialized entities, we have one plan focus on serving that population, that these children actually do better. So that is why we are looking at just doing a specialized product and not rolling them into our mainstream product. We want to make sure we can hold some entity accountable. And in these other states, they've used, Arizona is a good example, but Ohio I would really raise up because they've done a lot of work with their stakeholders and really, I think, shine nationally for best practice in this area. And that's something we want to follow and emulate, is how they did their model. They brought stakeholders to the table in building the contract for these plans and designing the new system, and also working with their localities in a way where they were able to create sort of that partnership with the plan to sort of support the localities. What we find at the state level now, and I think at our local level, at the county level, is that there are limited resources to do what we need to do to serve these children. And so having more of that larger entity to help us with that is what we need. But Arizona, Washington, Ohio are the three that we are really going to be trying to follow and modeling with our vendor.
May I follow up, Chair? When you look at like a program like you described in Ohio, is that something that we will be able to emulate here? Do we have some of the similar challenges that maybe they faced, or are we trying to emulate something that we might not be able to replicate here?
Stacy Weeks for the record, Madam Chair. I think we can emulate this. I think we are all struggling nationally with how to ensure that these children have a network of providers, that they're getting quality services. The fee-for-service model, quite frankly, is failing these children, and we have to find a different model. And so this looking at Ohio and some of the challenges they were having with this population and looking at how they've been more successful than many other states in doing this. But we do also know that Washington's had this model for some time, and it has been successful, especially even with some of their larger counties. They've been able to create a hybrid, for example, where they still hold the case management service in one of the counties, and the managed care entity supports them in that work. So we know that there are other states that can do this, and we do believe that we can emulate that and actually, I think, do better by kids in the state.
And then I have a follow-up question regarding the private hospital provider tax. Obviously, we are now heading into almost a year of this being implemented, and do you have any, are you anticipating what additional supports or services might be funded with this private hospital provider tax, and what we'll be able to take those funds that we are able to collect from that and also further match it with other federal dollars? Do we have anything on or before the 2025 legislative session?
Madam Chair, Stacey Weeks for the record. One of the questions that this committee raised last time was making sure that this account was viable. And so we're trying to be very mindful of since it is our first year, we're not spending it completely, all of that 15% that we can spend under Senate Bill 435 to make sure that we do not need state general fund. But I think once we get another fiscal year under our belt, we can start to add more to that. I think we're trying to be fiscally responsible with that funding, knowing that year two could look different than year one. So we just want to be careful that we're not overspending. But yes, there are other opportunities that we're looking at to improve behavioral health care in Medicaid.
Do we have like a strategic plan on how we will potentially implement, what priority points will be that we want to implement, assuming that in year two, in year three, in year four, that this is a long-term viable plan?
Madam Chair, Stacey Weeks for the record. Very good question. Again, thank you. What we're looking at right now is really focusing on the money that we need to comply with the DOJ, the Department of Justice report. That is the key priority, and I think that was part of the purpose of this legislation, was to support children's behavioral health. So I think once we get where we feel like that has been solved and possibly need more provider rate increases in other areas. The other area that we could use the funding for, which we have started looking at, is access issues around behavioral health, especially in our outpatient and that care continuum. There's early prevention, which we know we need to do more of, and there's also the outpatient services that we need more of. So looking at investing in those to try to get people to be able to stay in their community and not end up inpatient or in our residential treatment centers. So it is, the strategy, I would say, is focusing first on getting this stood up and what we need to do that and support the provider system, and then seeing how much is left to see if we can also invest that in more for adults as well in behavioral health care. Thanks.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this information. It's very encouraging. Along the same line of questioning regarding the hospital provider tax revenue, I'm curious on strictly fiscal numbers. One of the arguments that you presented before it was passed was that we could parlay that up into, we were leaving federal monies on the table, where if we implemented this provider tax, we could be getting those funds in. So can you share with us the overall picture of what you've collected overall with the provider tax revenue, and what federal dollars have we able to bring in because of that?
Madam Chair, Stacey Weeks for the record. I'm going to phone a friend, Lynette Aaron, on this one because she tracks this quite in detail. Lynette, would you mind coming up?
For the record, Lynette Aaron, Division of Healthcare Financing Policy. I apologize, I don't have those numbers with me specifically, so I can take that offline and get back those numbers back to you.
Thank you. Jennifer Krupp for the record. As we reported in the April IFC,
And so I'm sorry that I don't have the exact math, but we do project a total of $193 million that will be invested into this program over the next biennium. However, about $45 million of that will be from that 15% drawdown that we get from the federal or from the hospital provider tax.
But I
Does that
think
help
what I was looking
clarify?
at the end of the day, how much have we as providers put into this, and what have you absolutely brought in from the federal government because of that? As you had mentioned, if we don't want to leave anything on the table, we were willing, the hospital's willing, providers willing to put money there so that we can draw back. And I just want to make sure that that has shown to be truly a positive resource. It appears to be, but I'd like to see the actual numbers when you can get them together for us, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
For the record, just Lynette Aaron. I just want to give just projected. So we did pay out approximately like around $550 million, but I can get actual numbers though to you later.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Senator Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am encouraged that you're talking about accountability, but I think what I'm trying to understand is on the foster side of this with the young adults in foster care from 0 to 25 and trying to build a stronger network of providers, what kind of accountability are you really going after here? I mean, having the funds is good, but I've been like baby toeing into the foster world in terms of the how they get the complex diagnosis. I think I brought this up before. The fact that they're not reassessed in the system. And I think I made the statement that, and this is my opinion, that they're being used as a mule in the system. And are we trying to crack down on that? And then I have a follow-up. Want the follow-up, I'll give you the follow-up. Because there's this follow-up that I also feel like there's a gap in the system around, and I think this is a poverty response that young mothers and some of young mothers of color who find out that they can get additional cash assistance, if they call them crazy checks in the hood, that they can get additional money if their child ends up with a complex diagnosis. And sometimes they will push for this and then take this extra cash assistance, which I believe comes from the county. But the story that I heard recently while I was out was super disturbing, that some providers were even being offered, behavioral health providers. It got to the point where parents, single moms or parents were saying, if you get my kid, give him a diagnosis for, having I don't want to call them crazy, but a complex diagnosis. Like they were like, it was getting to the point where this is what was disturbing to me. And I don't know if I can say this. I can't say this on the record, but they were willing to offer sexual favors to get their kid a crazy check, which means that they knew that this child was not, didn't need that, but because of poverty and finding out, oh, you can get money if you get these diagnoses on your kid. Like this was an active activity, they explained to me, for a solid 7 years, and I was blown away. So are we trying to go after some of the, because to me that's a crack in the process and in the system.
Madam Chair, Stacey Weeks for the record. I'll address your first question. I'm still disturbed by the second, so I'm very disturbed, and I want to follow up on that one. The first one, when it comes to accountability, Medicaid is responsible for it. And when we talk about case management, from our perspective, it may be different from what maybe the county does in terms of case managing a child placement with the foster care family and all those pieces. What we are paying for today to the Clark and Washoe especially, but we would be paying also as well to this new entity, and also it would help us support is actually helping children get assessed, get screened appropriately, making sure, and if we can track with a managed care plan better than what we can do today, that they'll have to report to us on the children who are getting assessed. Are they getting services, or are they just being placed back into an institution? Because that's what it is. A residential treatment center, which we all need to move away from. And this gives us that opportunity to find someone and penalize them for that. And we need to be able to have that in our system. Otherwise, we will never be able to stop this cycle. And we're hopeful that this new entity and delivery system can at least help us do better at seeing what's actually going on and helping children find outpatient services. And also, the nice thing I would say about a managed care entity, I know I'm going to admit they're not perfect. And that's part of what a lot of my team spends their time on, is holding them accountable. But I will say that if you hold them accountable, you can get good outcomes, and that is something we want to do for these children. And I think that's why we want one entity to do this work, so we can really oversee that program. But I would note that we are one of the first states in the country to require our for-profit managed care plans to reinvest their profits back into their communities, and we'd want the same thing for this specialized plan, is that they are not just profiting off of the situations, they're investing that money back into families to support foster care families and other services that support children with behavioral health needs. So I hope that answers your accountability question, but our contracts have multiple provisions in them that allow us many tools to hold them accountable and to better track outcomes. And I will also say CMS just came out with a new federal rule with quality rating system that we're going to have to put together over the next 3 years to really show everyone how these managed care plans are performing. So I'm actually excited about that. I know that's going to be a lot of work for us, but I think it will give more transparency in our program. On your follow-up question, a couple thoughts. If a provider is diagnosing someone improperly, that's unethical and violates all of their standards, I would say, under a board. So if that is happening, I would hope someone would report that to the board. We would be able to find that because all of the providers that would be contracting with our managed care entity have to follow state law and federal law, and that is criminal, in my opinion, what is going on to those children if that is occurring. So that is something our health plans would definitely be tracking. We also have a surveillance and utilization review team, which is our fraud unit. And I will say they keep me busy. I am constantly signing, unfortunately, termination and other things. And we do report crime and fraud to the AG's office. So if there's anything like that you can send to us that we could report over to the AG's office, I would really welcome that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I have one more question? Yeah, no, it's kind of scary. So it's my understanding that if a child was improperly diagnosed, that there's no way to revoke that diagnosis and re-examine. And I don't know if that's true, but that worried me even more if there was abuse within the system, right? Because what I heard was that, and I appreciate that you're pushing for reassessment, that there was no reassessment, and that a child who ages out of the system with that complex diagnosis is then not able to do military, they're not able to do police. Their life is limited, and it raised an eyebrow for me because we have a population of individuals who may or may not be, their diagnosis may be inappropriate, and they're living their life with it, and there's no way to peel that back. There's no way to make sure that they're going to join the workforce because someone used them as a mule. And I'm trying to figure out is there something in this process where we can identify, find, and reassess and determine if you literally should be in that status? Because that's more concerning for me, because we're creating an underground and a subpopulation that will not be able to survive without these checks that we have provided them.
Madam Chair, Stacey Weeks for the record. So my division does not do cash assistance, but I know Robert Thompson, the administrator at Division of Welfare Supportive Services, takes that very seriously. So I'd like to take that back to him as well. And also talk to our director about whether or not we can look at if there are any restrictions on people removing an incorrect diagnosis. I can't imagine that they couldn't if it was improperly placed on them, but I apologize. I cannot speak to that. But what I can tell you is that what I failed to mention earlier, and I apologize, is in this system that we're trying to create, we recognize there is stigma around diagnoses. And I think that there are a lot of federal and state law protections around that. And, but not always do they work, right? But most people are not supposed to discriminate based on that, but sometimes that does happen. But one of the things that we're going to try to do with this, and I actually saw CMS yesterday at a meeting and told them they're going to have to figure this out because we need to have a tier of coverage for children at risk. So they don't have to be diagnosed, but they meet certain types of indicators and they can qualify for a subset or most of these services that we are adding, the wraparound services, the respite care for families and things like that. So we're looking at creating that new tier that I hope moves us away from families and children having to be diagnosed early and creating that stigma for the rest of their life, right, that follows them. So I apologize, Senator, that I don't have the answer on the law on that other question, but I would love to have our team follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is unanimously. Thank you for being here. Members, we're going to go back to list in the item that we had passed was item 89. And I believe BPS, we have the cosmetology provider that was able to join us online. Is that so?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. Could you state your name and who you're representing on the record? Thank you. And thank you for being able to jump on this call with a very short notice when the other presenter was not available. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for allowing me. My name is Gwen Bramo, last name B-R-A-I-M-O-A. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for allowing me to come before you today to request $300,000 from the 2024 ARPA funds for the cosmetology program that's located inside the Florence McClure Correctional Facility. Because of the overwhelming amount of participants waiting to program, we're requesting the funding to continue training and licensing and preparing the individuals for work readiness and self-sufficiency. So if you have any questions for me, I'm available to answer.
Thank you so much. And I believe we do have at least one question from you, and that will come from Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, I will have a follow-up. I have an additional question. Thank you for bringing this program and this request forward. My question is, if the work is approved, when do you believe you would actually be able to administer the actual certification through the Pearson system?
Oh, good question. We're working diligently. Actually, we have an emergency board meeting on this coming Monday with the Nevada Board of Cosmetology, because we've been working diligently with the Pearson View to become a written testing facility to go inside to do the written. Last year, I believe it was around September, the Nevada Board of Cosmetology adopted the Pearson View Testing Center to be able to test the licensees on a daily basis. Not considering that in the past, the Nevada Board of Cosmetology had always came inside the facility written exam. Because Pearson View doesn't have a written exam, they're supporting, we kind of like in the final approval stages, they're supporting us to become a testing site.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. So then the 300,000 is, so you're saying the actual test for the cosmetology certification will be on paper, but the request, it's including supplies and technology. So is that for the actual training portion of the program, which would be separate from the Pearson testing application?
Yes, correct. We have over, let me see, I do have the numbers. We have 17 young ladies that completed the 17. We have 36 ladies that's waiting to be tested through Pearson VUE, and then we have a new class that has been approved between the Florence McClure and the Expertise New Path, waiting to begin training. So 3 of the ladies have been released already and have been licensed on the outside. But the ideal of the program is to make sure that the individuals are licensed or complete the program and receive their license before they are released.
Okay, thank you. That answered one of my other questions about making sure that once they do take that test, that they are able to be licensed. I was going to ask when they can be licensed, but you're saying they actually can be licensed through the state before release. Do you have any tracking system to, because again, we want to make sure, and I actually had started and used to run a prisoner reentry program years ago, and so it's really important to make sure that we're providing training and opportunities for individuals, but to make sure that they get those licenses and those jobs upon release. So I'm assuming you'll be tracking how many of the individuals that go through the training program and graduate actually do pass the certification test. But then again, we know passing the certification test and actually obtaining the license from the state is still 2 different things. So is that part of, you said you're meeting with them tomorrow, is that part of what will also be tracked?
Yes, correct. That's what we've always done from the very beginning. The program, we initially started the program in 2016. I believe our first class graduated in 2017, 2018. The written test is administered by the institution, and the State Board of Cosmetology, their esteemed proctors, have always went inside with the written exam to actually administer the written to the ladies, and their license upon release is the way that the program is actually set up. But because there was a glitch with not knowing that Pearson VUE did not furnish written test, which is going to probably be better for the facility in the long run, because we'll be actually able to administer the written test on computers inside the facility moving forward. And far as, and I can address to the making sure that they have the tracking. We do have a tracking. We have a program manager, which when the individuals are released and through probation, parole, some of them are. We have networked. We have partnerships. We've partnered with Foundation of Independence Tomorrow. We have chain salons. One of the ladies that was just released has just been hired. She's been out for about 2 months, and probably right when she got her license, she went to work with Great Clips. So we've been partnering with Ulta Beauty, Great Clips, and just trying to get as many corporate establishments as possible so that we know that they're receiving actual paid W-2 wages.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Further questions? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being on the call. My experience is often that if a person is a stylist or a nail tech, that when they work for work at a salon, they are like an independent contractor. Am I correct in that analysis?
Well, actually, I am a licensed cosmetologist and instructor as well. And when I first started, when I graduated, what we like to do is I like to recommend that they go into a chain salon for experience, to build their skill set, to be able to make sure that they have a paycheck and not have to worry about having to market their own clients, that they'll be pretty much monitored under the management of a chain salon. So what we're establishing now, and that's some of the reasons for the post-release funding as well, is to make sure that we cover the areas with their housing. We be able to assist them with job placement, because we have a cosmetology and barbering school in the outside, in Las Vegas, located separately. We do have a lot of relationships with the local salons and chain salons as well, but not necessarily. Most of the young individuals, or the individuals that do leave, try to leave out where we can assist them. We can't say that we going to place them, but we can assist with placement. And those are that's the area that we're working hard to improve, is to make sure that they have actual W-2 wages.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. I can't imagine having been incarcerated and then trying to figure out how you're going to be an independent contractor at a salon without help. But may I also ask, have you thought or tried to build relationships with any of our local chambers or the Nevada Partners or others? You did say you were working with FIT. For those young ladies who are not able to find work in a chain or want to graduate from that to be independent, to help them figure out and learn the ins and outs of starting their own business, having to pay their taxes, maintaining their licenses, paying their shop the fees every week, just so that they are prepared for the next step. And I'm sure you're gonna say yes, but I just thought I would ask you anyway. But I have a feeling you're gonna say yes.
Well, I just want to be able to share something else with you. Inside that proposal, there is a program that we've incorporated called Growing Oaks. And it's a program that it's an elevated station. It's a 4-level financial literacy program that's used in post-release systems in the Oklahoma system. So we wanted to be able to bring that 12-week component into the cosmetology program as well.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions and that answer. That's great. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any. I will entertain a motion for approval for N89.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, and thank you again for being able to jump on and share the information about this program so that we can move this work program forward. You have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate everyone. Bye-bye.
And with that, members, we'll move back to item O, and the next one on that list was 105.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Marla McDade Williams, Administrator for the Division of Child and Family Services. We are here today to present a work program that would remove $5,031 in Medicaid federal assistance and transfer $2,405,648 from the personnel category in our mobile crisis unit to fund the transfer of the mobile crisis response program to Washoe County Human Services Agency. We have administered mobile crisis response in Northern Nevada and in the state since about 2013. Recently, I became the administrator in September of 2023. And we had begun discussions with Washoe County to transfer services because we have significant vacancies in our program and our responses were decreasing significantly. So the first set of numbers that I actually saw, we had 20 calls for a community of 400,000 in Washoe County. That number has increased slightly, but right now and as a result of the discussion of transfers, we are down to 10 staff in the program. And and then Washoe County has recently made an investment in its behavioral health programs in its county, and it just made sense at this time to look at them taking over this activity. We stand up programs as a safety net provider, as you know, and as programs mature and are able to take on these services and meet the needs directly in their community, it makes sense for us to make those transfers. So this has seemed somewhat accelerated. Like I said, we started discussions back in December. When they made the changes in April, it became more feasible for the transfer to move forward sooner rather than later, just to ensure that they could get their feet on the ground. They have something like, I don't know, we have vacancies in the rate of 48%, and they maybe have 10% or 5% or something. They don't face the same challenges we do with hiring staff. So they recognize that they have the ability to do this, and it would benefit their community to do it. I don't know where you want me to start. When we do make moves like this, we have obligations under state law to ensure that we are protecting staff in the process. Part of that process requires us to issue layoff notices to staff, but it is part of the process. We have identified positions for every staff person to step into. They are qualified positions within our agency. So if this is approved, they have positions that they can take immediately if necessary. We work with them to help them understand the process. Washoe County has actually offered a very generous package to the employees. They are taking them without needing to apply for the positions and compete for the positions. It's a straight transfer. So it really is something that doesn't have a detrimental effect on staff. Because there are positions available to them either in Washoe County or with us. And we understand right now that 7 of the 10 that we have indicated a desire to transfer. But, as we go through this process, they will be asked to commit to that so that we can ensure that we make an appropriate transfer to the county. And again, there are processes involved in that. They sound kind of scary, but they really are just a process. At some point, we do need a formal resignation notice so that we can start paperwork to get that done. It isn't anything that is detrimental to their personnel packet or anything like that. The reason for transfer is, transfer of the program. It's not anything related to disciplinary or anything like that for anybody. We are working with the collective bargaining organization as well, and to ensure that we meet everybody's needs through the process. And I guess I'll stop there for now and wait for questions.
We did have some public comment on this at the beginning of the meeting, so there may be a few questions, and we're going to start out with Speaker Yeager.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And if you will allow, I have a few questions, and some of them I had before, and some of them did come as a result of public comment at the beginning of the meeting. I first did want to say that I had a very productive conversation with our former colleague, Senator Julia Ratty, last week about this proposal, and that answered a lot of my questions. I really appreciated that communication, and I think of utmost importance, I know to me and I think to many members of this committee, is the fact that no one's going to be displaced, in the sense they're not going to lose their job. They're going to be able to transfer within the state system or be employed by Washoe County. So I know that's a really tricky thing to try to do between state and county, so just want to acknowledge and recognize the work that went into that. The questions that I have for this program, and probably this first one, it might make sense, I don't know who wants to answer it, but if you could talk a little bit about how this transfer from the state to Washoe County will increase both the availability and the timeliness of both the telephone-based and in-person crisis response services. I think that would be helpful for the committee.
Good afternoon. For the record, Ryan Gustafson, RYANGUSTAFSON. I am the director for Washoe County Human Services Agency. To answer your question, Washoe County, sort of out of necessity, but also recognizing the need for behavioral health services, already has a fairly robust clinical unit. To use a term used earlier, baked into our agency, comprised of over 20 staff. I think the goal, and to Ms. Williams' comment, the goal is to bring this team over to be able to combine with the current clinical team to be able to provide services not just in Washoe County, but to continue to partner with the state to make sure that the rural and other areas are served as well. Our vacancy rate is at about 3.5%. Our staff vacancy rate. So I will knock on wood. So we do have a pretty successful track record of filling positions, keeping the positions filled. I also know that with the history of the program, I was with the state when the program started, and I actually started the program in northern Nevada, in Washoe County. So I know some of sort of the bones of how mobile crisis response works. And so what I'd like to do is to bring those staff over who want to come over to Washoe County. We don't have... we're not going to completely reinvent the wheel, because many things that the program was built to do, it has historically done it well. I think one of the issues that, as was stated, one of the issues is vacancies. It makes it really hard to have an adequate number of teams to be able to operate the program. And I know currently the program is not operating optimally in that it's limited on its hours and the days. And I know, for example, on the weekends, some of the business gets shifted down to Clark County. That is not optimal when it comes to crisis response for children and families. Optimal behavioral health crisis response services should be in person when it's a crisis. I understand that can't happen all the time, and we learned some really good lessons during COVID on how to do business via telehealth, but that's not the best way to do business. And so if we can bring over the folks that want to come over, and to Ms. Williams' point, the folks that don't want to come over, there's positions at the state. I think we could utilize our current team along with the new positions and teams to get the program kick-started again, to where it can really, we can really offer not just robust services, but be able to do it expeditiously. The other sort of secret sauce to crisis response is how fast can you respond to the crisis at hand. And ideally, and when we started the program, when there was what we considered like a high priority crisis, our goal was to be in that house within 60 minutes. I would like for us to be able to get back to some semblance of that. Obviously, Washoe County is a little bit bigger now than it was 10 years ago when the program was started, but it's still a community that is a size that we can still respond very expeditiously. And the goal is to keep kids out of the hospitals. And as many on this committee know, we lost our behavioral health hospital for children of West Hills. It only left us with one. And so having a program that can offer a diversion rate of 85%, 90%, hospitalization, that's really key in our continuum of care.
Great, thank you. And obviously, it makes sense fiscally, financially, also just the right thing to do for our community. So appreciate the fact that I didn't know that you were there on the ground level starting that program. So that's a real benefit, I think, to the state and to Washoe County for that sort of continuity. A couple of questions I wanted to ask. They came up in public comment, so just wanted to ask to address these. Do we think there'll be a gap in service as we transition from the state to Washoe County? And the second part, you kind of mentioned it, but just wanted to ask, is when we transfer it to Washoe County, is it only going to be serving Washoe County, or is it going to serve adjacent areas as well?
Ryan Gustafson for the record. Try that again. Ryan Gustafson for the record. The goal, no gaps in services. Timing is really key when it comes to mobile crisis, and by and large, the biggest referral and caller of mobile crisis response is the school district. So timing is pretty key right now because we have a little bit of time to do that transfer while school is out, and then when school comes in, business picks up mightily especially when the school year starts. So business is slow right now, and that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. It's good that there's not, that many crises, but we plan to do a lot more marketing to get back out there to make sure the community knows that we have a robust system and we can respond expeditiously. So we anticipate that it will pick up pretty significantly, but we have a full clinical unit who is excited and prepared to cover any gaps. So, for example, if half of the current staff choose to come over, we understand that that's 5 out of 10 positions. This is where we'll leverage our current clinical teams to do the response as we ramp those units up. So I would not anticipate that there will be any service gaps in the interim while we transfer. And secondarily to the surrounding areas, it really, when mobile crisis started, it was a partnership because DCFS does children's mental health in the urban counties, and much of the other services are pushed to the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. And what we had done is we had a strategic partnership with the rural areas to have DCFS really help out and do a lot of cross training. And again, some of the telehealth was done, but a lot of those services are still provided by the Division of Public and Behavioral Health with the state. With that said, we have full intention at Washoe County to provide any assistance and partnership that the rurals need, because again, I recognize that it's faster for one of my teams to drive to Carson City, or to drive to Fernley, or to drive to Fallon, or to Lovelock than a team that perhaps sits in Elko. And I also recognize that I would rather have someone drive for half an hour to do a face-to-face response than for somebody to call in and do something via tele. So we are all on board with a partnership and helping out with the rural areas.
Hey, thank you. Just one more, if I could, Madam Chair. I noticed when you said 3.5% vacancy rate that Ms. McDade Williams looked stunned by that, and rightfully so. We've been talking in the legislature about state vacancy rates for a long time. I think we're hopefully making progress in that regards, but certainly this makes sense to me in terms of why we would want to transfer to Washoe. My question with that is, should we consider this transfer to be a long-term transfer for budgeting purposes? Have you had those discussions about whether this is intended to stay in Washoe County, or whether if we ever get a vacancy rate that's a little more acceptable for the state, we might look at bringing it back to the state?
For the record, Marla McDade Williams. So right now we plan for it to be a transfer out into however long it takes. We don't have any plans to bring it back at this point, as long as it's successful there. We will be doing a sub-grant, and in that sub-grant, we will also ask for some data, right, and accounting, and ensure that, because we do also have expectations of response times and all of those things, and we will write that into our sub-grant. So, monitor it that way, and if things start to fail, yes, then we would look at it coming back. The amount of transfer, we don't anticipate adding out into the future. It is the amount that we are transferring today that we would put in our budget out into the future. Some of you may know that the Division of Public and Behavioral Health used a similar model to transfer adult crisis response to Las Vegas Fire a number of years ago, and that contract has stayed in place with them, again with some monitoring, but the amount hasn't changed over that time either. And right now, we don't intend to add anything out into the future.
I have a few more questions. We'll go to Assemblywoman Taylor and then Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for being innovative in your thinking and for really taking advantage of an area that can just do better right now, right? You guys talk later about the 3.5%, so I caught that look as well. My question is just on the transferring of the staff members. Are they going to have any loss or see any difference between pay, benefits, retirement, any of those kinds of? I know you talk with the bargaining units, but what's the status of that?
Ryan Gustafson, for the record, thank you for that question. It has been a very arduous process to figure out how to sort of get folks transferred between the state and the county. Much trickier than I had anticipated, but we have, between our fantastic HR units between the county and the state, who have done a tremendous amount of work. The answer to your question is no. So what we'll look at again is where folks are. The way that the pay scale works is you're in a specific job classification for a caseworker, for example, and that has a salary range, and then you work through your steps over your longevity that you work for the state, and it looks very similar with the county. And so, what we've done is we've looked at where the pay rate is for staff that would be incoming to the county, and we have assured them that they will not take a pay cut. They'll be at the next high. They'll be at the very closest, but not lower, on where the steps go. We also have. We've been able to figure out how to not have probation again for staff who are not probationary any longer at the state. They won't be probationary at the county. We've been able to work out staff bringing over annual leave as well with them. There are some insurance things that we're still working on for staff as well. Fortunately, the county, the insurance system has just recently changed at the county, where benefits kick in 30 days rather than a much lengthier time period. So we're still working through some of those details, but to your question, no, there will not be any pay reduction for staff.
Thank you. Just to follow up, and thank you, that's great to hear, because that's all the details that get in the way sometime, right? Do we currently have like positions in the county, so that the comparison, so there will be doing the same position but making different amounts of money?
Ryan Gustafson, for the record, thank you for that question. They're titled differently, but they're similar. So, for example, with the state, a position might be called a psychiatric caseworker. At the county, that equivalent position would be called a human services caseworker. The mental health, the therapist positions actually have the same title. They're mental health counselors at the county and the state. But yes, there are equal positions. They're just titled a little bit differently.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assemblyman O'Neill?
Thank you, Chair. I got to just say I'm disappointed that the state cannot meet their requirements due to staffing and has to pass off a state service to a local county. With that, though, it is what it is. Unfortunately, we can't meet those needs. But I do need some clarification. I just want to make sure, and expounding on the last two questioners, you talked about pay, you talked about their vacation time would come over. How about such things as seniority? Do they understand that some of the retirement benefits may be different? Do these employees coming over understand that there's differences between the two agencies?
Ryan Gustafson, for the record, we are also going to phone a friend. We have our HR representative from the state.
Lisa Alfred, HR Officer for Division of Child and Family Services. As for your question with retirement, we have been in conversation with them, letting them know that there is different options with that. We've also referred them to PERS so that they could get the answers directly from them and not have them as them being the subject matter experts. So in relation to the retirement, yes, we have spoke with them regarding that and given them the differences in the different pay classes and what that looks like if they were to transfer. In regards to seniority, we are actually going to give them the seniority calculations, and that is part of the program that WASHO has given them to be able to carry their state seniority over with them.
Very good. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that our employees are fully knowledgeable of this program and we don't hear about issues later. And I have one other question. From prior experiences where the county, Washoe County, has taken responsibility for statewide services where they've said first come, first serve, they haven't always lived up to that. So I just would like it on the record that if Pershing County, Lyon County calls before Washoe County for an incident, that they'll be served first. First come, first serve. I'd like that on the record, please.
For the record, Marla McDade Williams. I do want to make a clarification before I answer that. So again, as Mr. Gustafson noted, we do have mobile crisis response services in the rural counties currently. So 12 of the 15 rural counties have those services provided out of clinics in those counties. That is a current service. So there's no change to that current service. So what Mr. Gustafson was referencing is they will be supplemental to that. They are not taking over a statewide service. Right now, our mobile crisis response team only served Washoe County, but again, if needed, these other services were already provided, so they were never primary on the rural services. They were only primary for Washoe County services.
So if I understand that correctly, because it was explained to me initially differently, this transfer and the financial from the state will only be for services they'll provide within the county of Washoe and our rural counties, because Mr. Gustafson talked about response to Pershing County, that they would be responding. So I'm a little confused now. If you could help, please.
Again, for the record, Marla McDade Williams, they would provide a gap. They will fill a gap if needed in that area. I don't anticipate those needs coming up. We do have mobile crisis response teams in Southern Nevada as well. So, so we have managed these primarily for Washoe County, for Southern Nevada, and then again, the rural counties were managed by the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, and there is no change in that process. So Washoe County is being generous in saying we will provide backup if needed, but it's not an expectation of the contract that we're moving over to them, but they are just offering, recognizing that if there's a need and we can fill it, because these other entities can't fill it, that they would be willing to step up and do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair, for the time.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification, because as we entered this meeting, it appeared that the services throughout the state were all being sent to Washoe County. So thank you for that clarification. And I'd like to ask a question. During the last legislative session, there was a lot of work done to help with the salaries and benefit packages for state employees, because we knew that for a number of years we were hurting because we didn't compensate people for the work that they were doing, so they found jobs elsewhere. With those changes, has it made it easier to bring in employees, or are you guys still struggling? And what more, as we look toward the future, should we think about doing to help so that services that members may feel the state should be providing, we'll be able to provide that if we actually had the staff in place to do it?
If I may, Madam Chair, for the record, Richard Whitley, Director for Department of Health and Human Services. I'd like to give a broader denominator. Certainly, in general, our vacancy rate has dramatically improved. Our eligibility workers in DeWiss, we've been able to fill positions and actually proudly would provide to this body our vacancy rate. Where we still have a vacancy rate that is a challenge are in our clinical services, just like Department of Corrections, just like the Veterans Nursing Home. And it's a national crisis for workforce shortage with nurses, with physicians. You add complications like juvenile justice or child welfare, and those are challenges and will continue to be for some time. And hopefully during the legislative session, we can look at strategies at growing our own, at making it easier for licensure and certification, and pay is a factor as well. But in clinical services is really specifically, and we'll provide for you a breakout of those specifics down to the disciplines that are actually most challenging.
That would be great. Thank you. And I think the members of this committee, after hearing at so many meetings of where we're lacking, will be very energetic and to work with you and other departments throughout the state to make sure the state is able and in a position to provide the services that we're supposed to provide to our communities. So thank you so much. Members, any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I will entertain a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would so move.
We have a motion to approve, a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Members, moving on, the next item on our agenda is item 0134, the Department of Motor Vehicles. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Molly Lennon, Administrator of Research and Project Management for Nevada DMV, for the record. Good afternoon, Chairman Moreno and committee members. I am joined here by Bob Kalin, our Program Senior Advisor, and on standby our IT Administrator and Deputy Administrator, Susie Pollard and Tim Simonetti. We are here, well, I would like to begin first by sharing that we have been meeting with the committee and some other folks, and we've been hearing the requests in terms of consumable information, consumable updates on the project. And I wanted to share that a consumable version of our program timeline is on our DMV website, along with a percent complete of our overall program effort. That will be updated monthly. That consumable roadmap and our numbered contractual deliverables outlined in each LOI serve as our program and vendor accountability mechanisms. I'm happy to say that we're currently on time for our August release of new registration and within budget. The purpose of this work program is to transfer reserves to the required implementation cost category to support the continued DMV transformation effort contracts. The transfer of $25,405,159 in reserves to the required implementation cost category, Cat 16, aligns with the 82nd legislative session, Senate Committee of Finance and the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means requirement that the department submit for approval to utilize reserve funding for projected fiscal year 25 expenditures. The expected benefit to be realized is the continuation of the department transformation effort in fiscal year 25 as funded by the 82nd legislature. For the department transformation effort in fiscal year 25, reserves will augment the required implementation costs category to support current contract obligations and any future contracts approved during the fiscal year in support of the transformation project. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I know that we have a few questions for this project. We're going to start with Senator Pacina.
Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I was reading through and noticed that in fiscal year 24, for slalom, there are approximately 75 full-time contractors, 12 part-time contractors. And moving into fiscal year 25, that number's really reduced from 38 to 2, meaning 39 full-time slalom contractors and 12 part-time contractors. So by reducing the number of slalom contractors from 38 to 2 to stay within the fiscal year 25 budget authority, does the Department of Motor Vehicles anticipate that the project timeline would be extended beyond the fiscal year 29 projected completion date?
Molly Lennon, for the record. Thank you for the question, Senator. The projected completion date for functionality, including vehicle and credentialing core products, is not anticipated to be extended beyond fiscal year 29. DMV has realigned contracted staff, realigned our slalom vendor staff beginning July 1st, and has assigned an additional 6 Move It vacancies to the DTE program in order to stay within fiscal year 25 budget authority with the least amount of impact to program velocity.
And one more question for you. If you could discuss when the updated fiscal year 25 estimates will be available for the project.
Molly Lennon for the record. We have reprioritized planned expenditures for fiscal year 25, and we currently plan to be within budget. We'll provide confirmed estimates in our July budget submissions.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I got to travel back to a statement. So I was reading the backup. So you're currently reporting that the Salam contractor has staffing for 37 full-time contractors and 12 part-time. There was a ramp up for additional 38 Salam contractors for a total of 75 full-time contractors and then 12. You have an estimated project cost of $53.8 million, which is an increase from what you thought was going to be $35 million. And now what you're saying is that in 25, you're going to knock down this additional 38 down to 2. And I guess what I didn't hear was what exactly is the 38 additional staff persons doing right now? Because they must have been needed. And so what are they doing right now that all of a sudden you can knock them down to 2 and say, we're done. And you're not even 1/4 done in the project. You're 20%, 25% would be at least 1/4. And you're not even there yet. So what are the 38 additional folks? What are their duties? What are they doing?
Thank you, Molly Lennon, for the record. These positions were added to 12 different DMV work streams to enable DMV to work faster and deliver more functionality while allowing our IT staff to upskill. Over the past roughly 30 business days, within that ramp-up period, specific assistance has been provided to the software quality assurance team, release management, business intelligence and reporting, integration ops, and security pods. Slalom has assisted DMV with security assessment and remediation of the Salesforce environment, refinement of the SQA processes to align with development and release activities, increased integration work with critical AMBA interfaces. We've stood up an operational support team that has completed UAT on 18 enhancements within our Compliance Enforcement Division Salesforce case management solution, and they're preparing for production deployment. And they've provided important guidance for connecting data and users to the Salesforce solution. So I think what I would like to highlight here is our intention was to augment, to increase velocity, and allow our in-house business and IT staff more time to upskill in order to support what we're releasing. What we've done is delayed that augmentation to fiscal year 26. And as referenced, we'll come back with our budget submissions with additional information on that augmentation.
Can I have a follow-up? So I heard a lot. So when you talk about delay the augmentation for 26, what exactly does that mean, right? Because you said several things. You talked about integration. You talked about how there's this releasing mechanism, and I really want those in like plain language terms. If you could like break that down to say, well, IT guy is going to sit at the table and help code, because I feel, you know why you guys are in the hot seat. Use like these really special, wonderful, big words, but what are they really doing? That is effectuating an actual outcome. Because if you're waiting for an augmentation in 26, and then you're going to bring back another budget item, and which basically says, you know, we had good intent, we wanted them to work together, we thought that this contractor would help everybody come up to speed, and now we found out that it didn't happen. Hey, can I have another 60 million? We're not trying to have that conversation, right? So use plain language words. You know how people come to the table and say, I don't want to hear the legalese. I actually want to know what that bill says. That's what I want to know. What do all those wonderful words say? I'm tired. I want the basics.
Molly Lennon, for the record, I can appreciate that. So basically, at the inception of the program, our intention was not to release incrementally. we did not plan and budget for a rapid upskill for operational support of our release mechanism. So, and when I say release, I mean going live with registration or driver's license. So the items that I just listed off are all part of our software lifecycle development. Once we go live with new registration, we need a release manager who can manage all of the tasks, move the code from one environment to the next. We then need developers who can sit at the desk and enhance the code, maintain the code if there's an outage, working obviously within the SLAs that we have with our vendors. Because that was not budgeted for, our transition plan for operations is going to take a little bit longer. If we hadn't released incrementally, we wouldn't have had to augment so early in the program. At this point, the only way to continue releasing incrementally and increase our velocity and allow our IT staff to train up to fulfill those operational needs is in order to augment the vendor staff.
Madam Chair, one last final question. So, because I don't know if I'm remembering this right, but did you guys testify during the session that your current IT staff was super, super capable of doing this work? Or maybe that was another, massive project that we've had before, but I thought I heard that. And so now you have a contractor who is requiring a lot of money to train your actual folks. And what's the roadblock? It's because it's not trying to speed it up. Are your folks, let me say this the right way. What are the weaknesses of your current staff that is now requiring this contractor to do double time to try to help them come up to speed? What are they missing that they didn't have?
Molly Lennon, for the record. And yes, I believe that statement was made in so many words that our IT staff is capable. The issue is the bandwidth. They have to maintain our legacy solution at the same time as they upskill for our new solutions in the cloud. I'm going to pass this to Susie Pollard, our IT administrator, and maybe she can shed some light.
Hi, committee. Susie Pollard, IT administrator for the Nevada DMV. If I could just give kind of a brief overview of what we're doing to lean in, if that would be, I think it would help piece together maybe some of the confusion. So in October of 2023, Move It, in partnership with Slalom, our vendor, went through a series of workshops, and those workshops covered operational support of the new system. So the output of these workshops helped us understand some of the skill gaps needed since we're changing technology stacks within the Move It team. It also created an adoption and transition plan, as well as the future state operating model. So Move It is aligned with the program, and currently we are providing 6 vacancies to be used within phase 1 of this plan. So that's part of our going lean to help augment what's happening with some of the shift of the vendors. Additionally, current Move It staff have been able to attend some Salesforce, MuleSoft, AWS, and Agile training. We are going to be continuing on our journey to upskill as part of this effort to support DTE. So we have a good transition plan that got yielded out of these workshops to assess the skill set. Move It staff who are not primarily supporting the legacy system are involved building the data storage, making connections for DT, which include integrations, the design and implementation of the user management and security of these new systems. So the staff is involved. We do have some of the additional staff involved. The entire Move It staff continues to keep the DMV system secure and operational, which include the current legacy system, all of the desktops, network, servers, storage and infrastructure, user provisioning, security, subject matter expertise support, and integrating the new system into our ecosystem. We also, on that legacy system, have major projects that include federal mandates. We're also faced with the changing technology of some of our partners. We recently completed some integrations with DPS, so they've been focused on getting that work done, as well as our partner in AMVA has announced they are moving away from their mainframe technology, which has put some load on the staff. So looking at all of that with the remaining systems on our mainframe has kept us focused. But we are aligned with the program, doing what we can to transition and support as an opportunity to go lean on some of this. And I'm welcome to address any follow-up questions if you have them.
Thank you for that. I just have one follow-up. So in the changing of the mainframes, were you given any kind of notice or idea that folks may have been changing their mainframes while you were trying to coordinate and build your own system? Or are you anticipating in 25 or 26 someone else showing up and saying, hey, by the way, our mainframe is going to be different too? And you've been working and trying to code towards, and now there's no coordination. Here's some more money that has to be spent. Because these are kind of things that you should know up front, right? What's your plan? Because if it's integrated and someone is moving in the opposite direction, that's not helpful, right? So what's your front end questions to your partners who you're trying to integrate with? Because these are things you should know now, not later.
Molly Lennon, for the record. Yes, we were aware entering this program effort that our AMVA partners were going through a modernization effort. Our AMVA partners have multiple integration connections that we rely on, and each of those, there's two subsets that are going through a modernization effort. Their mandates change, and the latest one falls in 2028. And again, we don't have any control over those. To answer your question related to our other integration partners, we've done outreach to all of our integration partners, and we've had conversation related to any modernization efforts that they are undertaking that might impact their ability to work with us as we go live incrementally with our product. And if I might add to the training discussion, there was a comment made that Slalom is doubling to train our IT. They're doubling to produce product so that we can work on training our IT, not to train our IT. We're actually working with Dieter in order to put together a plan for training and also to review our transition plan, again, a deliverable of the contracted vendor, to make sure that we are going to execute properly and effectively transition that to our IT staff.
Thank you. I hope somebody's going to ask, what is Dieter getting paid? Are they getting paid anything?
That's a good question. My understanding is that there is a funding mechanism in order to upskill people going back to work. I don't know the details of that program, but I can certainly look into it and find out the details. We're at the beginning of our discussion with them. We have to enter into an MOU and go through the proper process in order to partner with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. As you dig into this, right, we've had an opportunity to review the transition project over, in my tenure, the last 2 sessions. I'm curious to know, do you have a list of projects that have been brought forward from the legislative body through the Growth and Infrastructure Committee that are things that the legislative body has decided already that it wants to work on? We were asked to delay repeatedly while we were continuing this DMV transition, knowing that there are transformation efforts that we are going to continue to pursue. Do you have that list, and is that part of your transformation effort?
Molly Lennon, for the record. Yes, we do have that list, and we appreciate all of the efforts made during last session. We intend to execute on those items, either within our DTE program or in our legacy stack. We are trying to avoid, because we're in code freeze, doing that work in our legacy stack. That being said, coming out of session, there were some items that we said we were going to delay that we actually got completed. And I can share that with the committee, but our intention is they're actually already in our program backlog to be a part of our regular releases, depending on what product, whether it's registration or credentialing that is impacted. So yes, that's already a part of our project plan.
Thank you for that. And then can you just detail how many employees do you have currently working on legacy systems, and how many employees do you have working on that transformation effort?
Don't quote me on this off the top of my Susie Pollard on for the record. I would say a good 2/3 of our staff are supporting DTE. just by the nature of what they do. We're a tiny but mighty team. We keep all 18 offices, statewide open and operational. So if those systems aren't up and moving, we definitely, it's not a good thing. So that team is very engaged. So it touches, I would say, a good 2/3 of them, and probably a half-time effort with everything going on. Our team is very knowledgeable on DMV processes, and so they are often pulled into meetings to explain, how does this connection work? How does this piece of technology work? So the DMV, the CAR system, is basically, it's also our financial system. So if you can imagine, this is a system that was built over 25 years. There's a lot of complexity to that. So I would like to give a shout out to my team, because they're doing a tremendous job keeping us up and operational and bringing in that revenue to the state that's, does support, the state's budgets. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. With that, I'll accept a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I so move.
We have a motion to approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblywoman Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's our last item under O. We'll move to the next item on our agenda, item P. It's a transfer from the Interim Finance Committee's account for foreclosure mediation assistance. The Home Means Nevada, Inc. Hi.
Hello again.
Hello.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Perry Fagan. I am the Deputy Director with Business and Industry and the President of Home Means Nevada, Inc. And thank you for this opportunity to come before you. I would like to, at this time, make a request for some financing from the contingency account. And if I may, at the end of that request, I'd like to just give you a very quick, short update on some of our numbers, which I believe are going to be important for you to know about. So thank you. We're here today to request the approval and transfer from the Interim Finance Committee of $111,182 from the account for foreclosure mediation assistance as set forth in Nevada Revised Statute. It's requested that these monies come from the contingency account, and it's my hope that you'll be able to approve those today for us. With that, I just want to give you a quick update on some of the information that you probably may be aware of, but just to make you fully aware of some of the situation that we have that's going on with regard to this particular account. After this funding will be hopefully moved over, or I'm sorry, this is not coming from the contingency account, it's coming from the account for foreclosure mediation, excuse me. Once those funds are brought over, we will have an account balance of roughly $26,000, I believe, is what's going to be left in the account. That's not even 1 month worth of expenses for the program moving forward. So it is likely that I'll be back probably in August to then make a request potentially from the contingency account to continue to fund the program. It's important to note that the program needs about 4,000 notices of default on an annual basis in order for it to break even and continue to fund itself. Last year, we had about 3,200 foreclosure notices of default that came through to fund the program. We had a shortfall last year. We came, I believe this time last year, and requested from contingency funds then. It is my estimation at this point, based on the numbers that we have received through May, we currently have 2,489 notices of default that have been filed. We're down 475 from last year, And I would estimate that that number will not break 3,000 this year. So we'll probably be around 2,700. So it's continuing to move down. This is not a bad thing when you really kind of look at it. And I do understand the benefits of the program, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it continues to be a concern from the financing side and for the program to continue to have the ability to move forward. So with that, I would be open to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I was going to let you get through your presentation and correct you of the source of the request from the foreclosure mediation assistance, not the contingency account. Members, questions? All right. So the transfer amount would be $111,182, correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and so moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is Q. It's the approval of the obligation of reserves pursuant to Section 21 of Senate Bill 504 of the 82nd Legislative Session in concern for the Public Employees Benefits Program. I had a discussion with the Governor's Chief of Staff and thought that he himself or someone from their office would be here, but in lieu of that, I'm happy to see that Asher's here to give us some information on this item, and then I believe Ms. Kaufman can also fill in some details. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Legislative Counsel. As a lawyer, I will tread lightly on the fiscal part of this item and explain some of the legal reason why it's in front of you. And hopefully Sarah will be able to back me up on any of the fiscal questions. It's my understanding that back in March, the PEB board met to set rates for the Public Employees Benefit Program health insurance for upcoming fiscal years. And as part of the basis of setting their rates, the board approved the potential use of a portion of PEB's catastrophic reserve to subsidize participant premiums, which had the net effect of reducing participant rates by a certain amount. The reason this item is before you is because your staff flagged that pursuant to Section 21 of Senate Bill 504 from the previous session, there is a requirement for IFC approval for any expenditure or obligation of reserves of the Public Employees Benefits Program in excess of the amounts otherwise authorized by the Act for the purpose of changing the health benefits available to state and non-state active employees, retirees, and covered dependents during the biennium under PEB. There was a difference of opinion in lawyers as to what the meaning of changing the health benefits is, as there often is between lawyers. And your staff's concern was that under a more expansive reading of this phrase, a court could conclude that using reserves to change the level of premiums charged to state employees constitutes a change to the health benefits available to state employees. And so out of an abundance of caution, we suggested that approval of the Interim Finance Committee should be given for this obligation of reserves at the risk of a court potentially concluding that the use of the reserves did change the health benefits available by changing the amount of subsidization that the state provides for public employees and the premiums they pay for those benefits. So that's why this item is before you for approval. It's our suggestion that the approval of IFC is required for this obligation of reserves by the Public Employees Benefit Program in order to reduce participant premiums. As to how the fiscal side of that actually works, I would suggest you turn to your fiscal analysts because they will be much better equipped to discuss that than I would be.
Thank you so much for bringing us the legal side of it and why it was put on the agenda. It was requested to be put on our agenda so that the members could hear this. Now we'll get the fiscal side of it from Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Mr. Killian had indicated during the PEB board meeting, they did go ahead and approve the use of $7.3 million in what's called the catastrophic reserve for PEB. The catastrophic reserve is typically provided for based off of an actuarially determined amount. That amount was $41.8 million for fiscal year 2024. So if that amount was utilized to mitigate some of the rates and a work program comes into the future to a future IFC requesting to draw down that particular amount, it will have to be replenished at some point by the 2025 legislative session based off of what the actuarially determined amount is for that specific period. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the fiscal aspect of this.
Well, I don't know if either one of you can answer this, but how would PEB replenish their catastrophic reserves if a portion of this reserve is used to mitigate the participants' premium rate increase for plan year 2025?
Madam Chair, the PEB account can actually either seek an appropriation or it can be adjusted based off of participant premiums as well as the state's contributions to premiums as well. So in the 2025 legislative session, they could contemplate any combination of that.
Okay, and it's my understanding that, well, I'm going to ask, if the committee doesn't approve the use of this catastrophic reserves, how would that affect the open enrollment and implementation period for the plan year for 2025?
Madam Chair, so the rates that were established and were provided to the employees that participate in PEB were based off of this reduction. It was $7.3 million. So if the committee did not approve this, PEB would ultimately have to reopen enrollment at a higher contribution rate, so the amount that was actuarially determined by their actuary Siegel, and would have to provide those rates then to the participants of the PEB program. And that would probably take a significant amount of resources to reopen enrollment and do that once again.
And then I have another question. If this wasn't approved and all of that had to happen, what could the possible effects to the employees be? Because I'm thinking they would be the ones holding the bag and have to pay for this, but I could be wrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Legislative Counsel. So that's the core concern as to why your staff brought this to your attention out of an abundance of caution. If our reading of the meaning of changing the health benefits is ultimately what a court would choose to go with, and the approval of IFC was not received before obligating these reserves, then ultimately, if challenged, and a court found that these reserves were spent without authority, then all public employees would have received a impermissible benefit in the amount of whatever the premium subsidy was as a result of the obligation of these reserves. So the result could be public employees or former public employees, because a case typically takes a number of years to work its way through the courts, could be on the hook for a bill in the order of hundreds or potentially over $1,000 that they would then be obligated to repay to the state for the benefits they received that the court ultimately ruled were given without legal authority.
Thank you. And then I believe Speaker has a question or a comment, but I just wanted to make sure that by the chair and vice chair requesting that this be put on the agenda, it does have a hearing that it needs to have. That saves us in that legal way. And if we approve this, it makes sure that we don't have any additional monies that would have to be paid up to reopen open enrollment. And it makes sure that the state employees are not put out on the hook for, if we were to lose a lawsuit and they have to pay back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Gillian, Legislative Counsel. That's correct. The approval of this item would eliminate any possibility of this being the source of a lawsuit that would put the employees on the hook for repayment of those benefits.
Thank you so much. We've had enough frivolous lawsuits. The state does not have a ending bucket of money to pay out lawsuits. But Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One, just want to express appreciation for our staff of identifying this issue and bringing it before us to be able to make sure that we do this the right way. I will say I am also disappointed. I thought there would be somebody from the executive branch here to talk about this. I understand that lawyers disagree. I'm a lawyer myself. We disagree at times. That happens. But in a situation like this, I've got to be honest, I just don't understand the resistance or reluctance of the executive to be a partner with us to make sure that we're protecting the state. It's not that difficult to come forward and say, look, there's a reasonable disagreement about what a phrase means. Let's make sure we run this through IFC to protect the state from litigation that would result in Nevada citizens having to pay back potentially thousands of dollars. So I don't understand that. I am going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not going to impute any ill intent. But I would just hope if something like this happens in the future, that, you know, we have great staff, but they're not going to catch everything. And we just have to be able to make sure that the legislature and IFC as a co-equal branch of government is approving these sort of things, because I would really hate to see a situation where this happened without our approval and we were sitting here talking about how to invoice state employees to pay back thousands of dollars. It seems like a really foolish thing to have this kind of a disagreement about. But again, want to appreciate our staff for locating this and identifying it. And hopefully if we run into this in the future, it'll be a little bit more of a collaborative process. I don't think anybody here was intending to cast any shade on the executive on this. We just want to make sure we get it right so that we're protected from lawsuits and our employees don't ultimately feel the harm of this. So thank you, Madam Chair, for the latitude to make that comment.
Thank you. So members, you've heard the discussion. This is an item I feel we have to approve. And that will be the motion I will be asking for. I do have a question from Assemblyman Hafen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't know if we know the answer, but what I've actually been experiencing is premiums are going up about 36% throughout the state. At least that's what I'm seeing. And I see here that what we're looking at for the employees and retirees that are non-Medicares, it's looking like 7 to 17%, depending on the category that they fall in. And I'm curious if PEB was able to provide us with any information of why we're seeing, and actually I see one of them's here, 19%, why we're seeing such an increase in the premiums that are being charged.
No, I don't.
Ms. Kaufman, can you try to answer that?
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I think that would be a question best answered by PEB.
Of course. Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned with pulling money out of the catastrophic reserve because I'm sure there's NRS regulations as to how that is to be established, the amount, what the reserve should be, and that even if we as IFC approve this, it seems to me that it would be perhaps against the regulation that established those reserves. And now those reserves are going to go below limits that are needed for what it was set up for, catastrophic claims that come in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Legislative Counsel. I can touch on part of that, and I may need to phone a friend for Sarah for more of the fiscal-related consequences. But generally, the catastrophic reserve is set after an actuarial review based on expectations for the money that would be necessary if there were a certain level of catastrophic claims. My understanding of the PEB Board's action is that it didn't necessarily spend the $7 million out of the catastrophic reserves up front, but they are projecting that for a certain level of enrollment, that money may need to be used. So it's contingent on whether the level of enrollment within the program actually meets those expectations. If it doesn't meet those expectations, then less money or no money would potentially need to be spent, or need to be spent. They won't know until later on in the fiscal year whether they would need to actually move that money, and at that point there would be a work program presented to IFC to actually move the money. Where this comes before IFC at this point is that Section 21 of SB 504 requires effectively pre-approval of IFC before any reserves are even obligated, much less spent. I think is a way to foresee and protect against potential spending of reserves that would need further legislative review. But for the actual fiscal side of that, I would need to turn to fiscal staff and plead lawyer.
Madam Chair, for the record, Sarah Kaufman, LCB Fiscal. Catastrophic claims are for claims that are big ticket items. So they're there basically to mitigate the current rates of individuals so that you don't see huge fluctuations if we do have claims that are, in excess of $100,000. I do not believe we've ever seen catastrophic claims utilized for other purposes such as this. And so I can't speak to whether or not this is truly a proper use of catastrophic claims. And I am unaware of anything in statute, though, that is specific to what these reserves can be used for.
But either way, it is in statute that the use of reserves is something that needs to come before this body and have a hearing, and that's what we're doing. And this decision was made without us being included in it. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. We didn't put ourselves there. But the vice chair and I felt it very important that this hearing did happen to make sure that we were not involved in any future litigation if we did not have this conversation. By having this conversation, there's been decisions made without us that are going to move forward. If we do not approve this item that's on our agenda today, then we're opening ourselves up to possibly other lawsuits. And if those lawsuits did happen and they were to win, then our state employees would be on the hook for the decisions that were made without us. The reason we put this on was to cover all of us, so we're in a better position, and hopefully we don't find ourselves here again. And it is my hope that the way we got into this situation never happens again, so we don't have to go through this. I have a worry because catastrophic reserves are for those big dollar ticket medical items that our employees may go through. But if their regular reserves aren't there, there has to be a solution. So just trying to make sure that we as a legislative body have done the work that we were elected to do, and that we are being good stewards of the state's money and making sure that we're not setting ourselves up or stepping back and just allowing legal action that we could possibly happen, may happen, but we have a responsibility to make sure that we ensure that it doesn't.
Thank you, Chair. That's a really great overview, but I'm still concerned about the use of these catastrophic reserves and starting a precedent. I'll have to vote no because of that. Thank you.
You can vote no, and then you can have that conversation with the executive branch, because they should have been here to answer these questions. Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess one of the things from being here forever, but I do remember in the last 20-some years, times that PEB did, in fact, use their reserves. And even I sat on the PEB board at one time and opposed that, because I thought I was worried about, spending down reserves to balance premiums. But I guess the real argument here is whether we're talking reserves, catastrophic reserves, and/or. But I concur with the chair. We don't need to buy a lawsuit on the back of our employees, and that's what we're doing if we don't approve this.
Ms. Coffin, would you explain to the committee, because there's some people that are joining us for the first time or just a few times, the difference between the regular reserves and the catastrophic reserves and how they're utilized?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So PEB actually has several different reserves. The excess reserve that PEB has is typically accumulated when members don't necessarily utilize the benefits that are provided. So at the end of the year, if there isn't utilization, there's actually excess reserves, and those excess reserves have in the past been utilized to provide benefits, health benefits, or to enhance health benefits for PEB participants. The catastrophic reserves are typically utilized for those big ticket items. What ended up happening in fiscal year 2023 was that there was a significant claim that was made for the catastrophics that was balanced forward from the prior year, which essentially wiped out the excess reserve. So currently, PEB does not have any excess reserves in their budget right now. So now the only reserves that they do have are the catastrophic, and I believe there's one other dedicated reserve that they have, though I can't recall the name of that one. Madam Chair, it's the IRNB reserve.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I think we all have our concerns, but this decision is the best decision for us as a legislative body and for the state employees that we all employ. So, with that, I will entertain the motion.
Thank you very much.
He made the motion.
Madam Chair, I will second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve from Assemblyman Hafen, a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any more discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have one in opposition, that is Assemblywoman Kasama. All others are approving. The motion does pass. Thank you, Mr. Killian, for coming in to do the work that should have been done by the executive branch, especially after the conversations that Senator Dondero Loop and I had with them. We appreciate it. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, R. It is an informational item only from our housing division. A status report on the Home Means Nevada Initiative for Affordable Housing. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Chairman Moreno, Vice Chair Dondero Loop, and members of the committee. For the record, Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, come to you to give the report on the status of the Home Means Nevada Initiative. Some updates to what you were previously provided. We have nearly 20% or very close to 100 million of funding expended of the total 500 million. 6 projects have fully expended their HM&I awards. 3 of them are new development projects, Buffalo and Cactus, Ridge at Sun Valley, and the Pinion Apartments, and 3 land acquisition projects. All the Home Means Nevada funded projects that were leveraging tax-exempt bonds and 4% low-income housing tax credits were approved last week at the Board of Finance. So we anticipate those will close very rapidly. And then just a quick update, we anticipate also, and we'll let the committee know, that when we have our first grand opening ribbon cutting, which we anticipate in August for the very first project, we will let this body know. And with that, oh, by the way, with me is Christine Hess, our Chief Financial Officer. Sorry. And with that, we both will stand ready to answer any questions. Thank you.
Members, any questions? All right, you mentioned a ribbon cutting. Any approximate date or time frame?
Steve Aycroft for the record. The first project I envision coming to fruition will be up here in Reno, the Dick Scott Manor Veterans Project, and indications are August. So in a couple months, but we'll let you know.
Awesome, sounds good. No questions for? Run while you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We completed everything that was pulled from List S, so that will take us to item T. It is an Economic Forum status report. And we will have Mr. Nakamoto provide that status report from the meeting. I was actually on the meeting with you.
I'm glad that somebody was watching. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, I can say that. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I am Michael Nakamoto. I serve as Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. I am also here in my statutory role as a staff member to the Economic Forum pursuant to NRS 353.227, I believe. And I am here to give a status report on the last Economic Forum meeting that was held on June 6th. The chair, Linda Rosenthal, was not available to make this presentation with me. She sends her regrets, but she asked me to do this presentation. So as all of you are aware, the Economic Forum is the statutory body that is responsible for doing revenue forecasts for the unrestricted state general fund on or before December 3rd of each even-numbered year, which is used by or which must be used by the governor in preparing the executive budget, and then a revised set, if necessary, on or before May 1st of the odd-numbered year, which the legislature uses for the legislatively approved budget. NRS 353.228 also requires 2 additional meetings to be held, one on or before December 10th of the odd-numbered year, and one on or before June 10th of the even-numbered year. And after those 2 interim meetings, the chair or a member of the staff of the Economic Forum is required to appear in front of the Interim Finance Committee and provide a report of that meeting. And again, that is why I am here today. So the Economic Forum, there are 5 members of the forum who serve 2-year cycles. That cycle begins during the spring of the even-numbered year. So the Economic Forum meeting that was held on June 6th was a brand new Economic Forum, except for the fact that all of the members of the Economic Forum who are currently serving also were serving at the December meeting. So there were no new members. 3 of the 5 members are appointed based on selections by the governor. Linda Rosenthal is the chair, as well as Michael Crome and Brian Gordon. Those are the 3 members who were selected by Governor Lombardo. There are 2 members that are selected based on recommendations from legislative leadership, one by the Speaker of the Assembly, one by the Senate Majority Leader. Marvin Levitt serves based on the recommendation of Speaker Yeager, and Jennifer Lewis serves as the selection of Senator Cannizzaro, and those are the two legislative members. So all of those members are returning, which made some of the meeting from this last time a little easier because they were all familiar with the process and whatnot. There were a number of presentations that were given. There was the selection of the chair and vice chair. Linda Rosenthal and Jennifer Lewis were selected as the chair and vice chair respectively. They served as chair and vice chair at the last meeting. There were staff presentations based on legislative actions from the last regular and special sessions, as well as a presentation by the Employment Security Division of the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation on the employment outlook in the state. And then the presentation that I am going to give to you today is an update on year-to-date revenue collections for the state general fund through the first 3 quarters, or in some cases 11 months of FY 2024, compared to the Economic Forum's forecasts from the May 1st, 2023 meeting. So you have a 22-page set of tables that were provided to you. I do not intend on going through all 22 pages because nobody really wants to hear that from me ever again. But I will kind of go through some of the highlights of these tables and just give a little bit of information and actually get to the bottom line is where are we at in terms of revenue year to date. So on page 1 of the packet is table 1, and basically, and I will apologize, I'm not going to go through all of these in great detail, but I'll just kind of give a high-level overview of each of the tables. But table 1 is a comparison of the FY 2023 actual revenues compared to the Economic Forum's forecast for FY 2023, and then the forecast in the peach, I guess that's peach, columns. That's the Economic Forum's May 1st, 2023 forecast for FY24, the current fiscal year. And so we give a comparison of the forecast to the actuals from FY23 as well as to the forecast for FY23. And then in the green column is a representation of what each of those revenue sources is as a total or percentage of the total state general fund. Where I'm going to spend the most of my time with this presentation, though, is on table 2. And this is the comparison of the actual year-to-date compared to the forecast. And I'll note that these are before tax credits. We do a separate set of tables. Tables 4 and 5 represent these same numbers after tax credits. But because there are some accounting issues that we deal with the tax credits, we actually force those to balance to the gross numbers before tax credits, and then we deal with that at the end of the fiscal year. But for now, I'm really just going to go through table 2 and discuss the information on that page 2. So what you'll see on the left are a list of the revenue sources, and the first block is the so-called major general fund revenues, and so those are the ones that are the largest piece, and those are the ones, the revenues that the Economic Forum specifically approves forecasts for based on deliberations at their forecast meetings during the forecast cycle immediately before the legislative session and then on or before May 1st during the legislative session. And so you can see the sales and use tax, the percentage fees tax, the insurance premium tax, the modified business tax, and so on. And so in the yellow column, we show what the actual collections were year to date for the reference period next to each of those revenue sources for FY23. And then in the peach column next to it are the actual collections for that same revenue source through that same reference period, so year to date through this current fiscal year. And then in the green columns, we calculate the year to date forecast. And basically what we do to calculate that is we take the FY23 year to date actual and we grow that by the percentage change for the entire fiscal year based on that Economic Forum's forecast. So basically what we're saying is for every month or every quarter that the growth rate that we need to reach the forecast for each month or each quarter is the same as the annual one, and that's just to keep it consistent. And then we show in the last column, or the next to last column, that says dollar difference actual less forecast. That is how much the actual revenues are above or below that forecast. So you can see, for example, for the sales and use tax, we've collected 9 months. The Department of Taxation at the end of May, so going back about 2 weeks, reported the sales and use tax collections for March. There's a couple of month lag due to actually having the tax paid, and then they report it the following month after that. But according to our calculations through the first 9 months, we are just short of $32 million below the forecast for the sales and use tax, which is about 2.3% below. And you can see as you go down the rest of those major general fund revenues, that's really about the only one where we're below the forecast. So the gaming percentage fee tax, that's the tax that's paid by the casinos on their gross gaming activity through 11 months. They have a different payment cycle, but we're now at 11 months on that particular tax. We're approximately $38.3 million above the forecast with only 1 month left to be reported. The insurance premium tax and the modified business tax are quarterly taxes, and you can see that we're approximately $26.2 million above the forecast through the first 3 quarters on the insurance premium tax, and approximately $46.6 million above the forecast for all 3 components of the modified business tax combined with each other. The one that's probably the most noteworthy here, just in terms of its scope, is the live entertainment tax, and we're talking specifically about the live entertainment tax for non-gaming establishments. This tax is bifurcated, where the portion of the live entertainment tax that's collected from gaming establishments is administered by the Gaming Control Board, whereas the live entertainment tax on non-gaming establishments, so outside of casinos, that is administered by the Department of Taxation. So we do report those separately, but for the live entertainment tax on non-gaming establishments, we're approximately $45.9, almost $46 million above the forecast through 9 months, which is 82% above the forecast. And I know the question is going to come. The question did come, in fact, at the Economic Forum meeting of why, and that is probably because a lot of activity for this tax, the big events that people have been talking about, such as Formula One and the Super Bowl, as well as the opening of the Sphere, were things that we knew about, but when we were doing our forecast, we might not have had the greatest idea based on the economic activity that may have occurred with respect to ticket sales and the like. But when we talk about the live entertainment tax on non-gaming, especially down in Clark County, places like Allegiant Stadium, T-Mobile Arena, the Sphere, those are your big venues that are generating the revenue for there, or for this particular tax. So as long as those venues keep drawing and getting attractions and events in there that are subject to the tax, this tax will continue to be productive. The end result, though, as you can see under the gray column, total major general fund revenues, is that for all of those major general fund revenues that are listed, we are approximately $127.6 million, or 3.6% above the forecast. Under the next category, select non-major general fund revenues. These are we call them the minor revenues, but some of them are more minor than others. You have, for example, the business license fee, which the year-to-date collections are around $100 million. The cigarette tax is one that is also fairly productive, but these are, we consider them non-majors only because the Economic Forum has decided to leave the forecasting of these and to the Technical Advisory Committee on Future State Revenues, which is a 7-member body who assists the Economic Forum in their duties. The 7 members of that body are statutorily defined. 3 of the members of that body are in this room right now, Mr. Thorley, Ms. Kaufman, and Ms. Stevenson, as well as the state demographer, the head of the Research and Analysis Bureau at Dieter, Vice Chancellor of Finance at the System of Higher Education, as well as the Chair of the Committee on Local Government Finance, or the designee of that person. But they are the ones who are primarily responsible for those. So for that, that's the reason kind of why we break those out into a separate category. But you can see on this table that those forecasts are largely in line. And when you get down to the total select non-major general fund revenues, we are approximately $1.4 million, or 0.3% below the forecast. So they're in line with the forecasts that were approved. The all other general fund revenues, that's basically everything else that's not on this page. And those go from things that are a few $100s to some that are even over $100 million, and I'll talk about that particular one as I go through this. But you can see that right now, year to date, we are approximately $73.6 million, or 31.8% above the forecast. And so the main reason why that has occurred this fiscal year is because of interest income. We've had conversations with Treasurer Conine and his staff about why we are so far above our forecasts on interest. And we knew that we were going to generate a lot of interest this year because, frankly, the state had a lot of money and is generating a lot of money right now, both in terms of federal ARPA money, and I'm sure you didn't want to hear those terms or that term again tonight. But there is a lot of money that the state is holding on to. And so we had a very high forecast for this revenue source. But Treasurer Conine and his staff met with us, were very helpful and gave us a lot of good information. But basically what they've said is, well, we have more money than we thought at this point for any number of reasons, and because of actions at the federal level that have not reduced interest rates as quickly as we would have liked, the interest rates are higher than the assumptions that were made. So of that $73.6 million that we are above the forecast right now, $66.8 million of that is attributable to interest, and that is through the first 2 quarters. So we will, we actually published these tables on June 1st, right before the Economic Forum meeting, so we only had the first 2 quarters. If we were able to update these for the 3rd quarter, that number would actually increase again by about another $16 million because the 3rd quarter of interest came in a couple of days before the Economic Forum meeting. So the end result right now, at least for these tables through the end of May, is that we are approximately $199.8 million, or 4.8% above the forecast. So we are doing okay, obviously, in most of the revenue sources. We're keeping our eyes out on the sales tax because that has effects not only on the general fund, but as well as on the state education fund, where a significant portion, or at least the majority of the revenue that flows into the state education fund is through the local school support tax, which is the 2.6% portion of the sales and use tax. So as long as the state 2% is not performing up to the forecast, then the LSST will not be either. So it is definitely something that we're keeping our eye on. With respect to the rest of the tables, Table 3 on page 3 is just a summation of, this is kind of the what's left in the fiscal year to collect and how much has to be collected in order to reach the forecast. In some instances, we're very close. So the one that sticks out to me is the percentage fees. On the second line, we have 1 month left to collect, and the next month can actually be down by 47.5% for us to hit the forecast. So we anticipate that we will end the fiscal year above the forecast. Table 4 and 5 on pages 4 and 5, again, this is looking at these specific revenues after the tax credits that are allocated to those specific resources. These are tables that we include more for bookkeeping. We don't really go through them and update them fully until the end of the fiscal year, so we have them balanced. The more relevant statistics for the time being are on Table 2, but we provide the information here anyway. Table 6 actually goes through and is a way that we account for the tax credits, not only by the tax credit program, but also by the specific revenue that they were allocated to. There are several tax credits, such as the film tax credits, and the affordable housing as well, where the holder of the credit can use them against one or more tax credit types. This is part of the reason why it becomes difficult for us to actually account for the actual compared to the forecast for the tax credits, because they can be used against multiple tax types, but we actually go through and show how they're being used year to date. And then finally, on beginning on page 13 of the packet, you have a table that looks like this. This is table 7. It goes through and does a comparison of the year-to-date collections for the entire state general fund, and this is going down even to those revenue sources that only generate a few $100s, all the way up to the state sales tax, which is over $1.7 billion for the entire fiscal year now. But we go through that line by line and show, okay, what were the collections for that through the end of May in FY23, and then again do the same thing through the end of May of FY24. And with that, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I will stand for any questions, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the presentation and standing in for the chair of the Economic Forum. It's a lot of great information. Members, do you have any questions? I know it's a lot to digest, but do you have any questions? Go ahead, Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously impressed by the non-gaming live entertainment tax collection. I think for those of us in Southern Nevada, not a shocker given what's been going on down there lately. But my question on that was, obviously, you mentioned a couple large stadiums, F1, but there are other venues that pay live entertainment tax. Do we have a breakdown? Like, would we be able to know, apart from home sports teams that are playing there, but like at Allegiant Stadium, what the amount of live entertainment tax was that was generated at that venue for taxable events? Same with T-Mobile in particular. Are they broken down to that sort of level? Or are there confidentiality issues that prevent that from happening?
Mr. Speaker, Michael Nakamoto for the record. That is a good question. And it's kind of a tricky question, as I'm sure that you can appreciate, that there are confidentiality provisions that are relating to individual taxpayers or specific events regarding the live entertainment tax. There are a couple of instances where the facility is the taxpayer, so we would be there is no possible way that we could actually disclose what it is, but we would actually have to go in and look to see the individual taxpayer and whether we could identify a specific event, because it may be a promoter who is, for example, paying the live entertainment tax based on an event that happens at T-Mobile, and they're remitting at the same time for something that's happening at Allegiant and something for, say, for example, the showroom at South Point. Just randomly throwing that one out there. But they could, and we would have to be able to go in and, to the extent that we would not be disclosing any confidential information, we'd have to actually be able to parse that out. So that might be the difficulty in that. So it's kind of the combination of the confidentiality issue and trying to get around that. And if we can get around the confidentiality issue, can we actually break out to specific facilities in the instance of promoters who may be paying the tax based on multiple events at multiple facilities?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that response. I understand the difficulties associated with that, and I guess I will be satisfied to know that we are outperforming those projections by almost $46 million at this point. So I think that's a good sign, and hopefully that continues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, this was just an informational, and thank you so much for staying.
Thank you.
Members, that is the last item before public comment, and the sun is still out. Yay. So That brings us up to public comment. This is our second session of public comment. If you'd like to make public comment, you're here in Carson City, I invite you to the chairs and fill in all the chairs. If you'd like to call in for public comment, the number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID for today is 883-2624-2452, and then please press pound. Not seeing anyone come to the table here in Carson City. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines that would like to give public comment?
Thank you, Chair. There are not currently any callers on the line to provide public comment at this time.
So with that, members, we actually did it. We stayed on time. My goodness, the sun is out. Safe travels home if you're going home tonight. And this meeting is adjourned.
Michelle, run.